Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I call to order this special meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. Video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes to speak has an opportunity. I would also want to add to that we are cautious of the meeting regulations, and there would be no more than 7 councilors in the room at any one time. And I believe we are good with that at the moment. So if there's more than 7, we need to remove one. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the clerk's office until Tuesday, 1 p.m. Our minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Committee members, please turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or remind you to turn your microphone on. Again, I call this meeting to order, and I note that we have a full staff of committee members. And I also thank the PLD committee for agreeing to switch meetings with us so that we could facilitate this. What else? Okay, that's that. Okay, so first item on the agenda, and someone has an agenda.
He's not here.
What?
Didn't show up.
Okay, Court. Thank you. This is regarding a water abatement and fee waiver regarding 251 Park Avenue. Can you speak for the staff, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Again, Court Blomquist, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. This particular item has been on your agenda. I believe you have placed it on more time twice. The clerk's office did receive a communication from Mr. Smoltz that he or his representative were not able to make it this evening, and we were informed this morning of that change. One of the previous meetings, I sort of have talked about it. I'm going to skip over the 6,000 bills a quarter we do and 24,000 bills a year. Of course, this relates to a high bill that they received in their June of 2022. This covered the period of March, April, May of 2022. As I've talked about before, the department and the city have a standard procedures for when a customer has a concern or question over about a high bill. That did occur. What happens is they contact the department. Our water meter folks go out, make an appointment, go out to the property. They'll walk through with the property owner or their representative. They have a checklist of things that they go check for: leaking faucets, leaking toilets, outside spigot issues, all those sort of things when they spend a little bit of time in the property. The water sewer meter folks did do that. They went out on May 9th of 2022 and they conducted a walkthrough. At that particular time, they did not find any specific issues. I'm going to say that's not unusual. Sometimes, particularly in larger facilities, multifamilies, you can have issues that may occur, for example, like a sticking toilet. Where somebody tells us, oh, golly gee, I got to jiggle the handle to get it to stop. So it doesn't always happen all the time, but when it does, if they don't do something, then of course that continuous running will add up the bill. But at this particular time, again, our folks did not find anything specific. We then do a monitoring for the next 3 weeks following that. And they did that, and during those readings, the usage did go back down to what it typically was historically in the records for that particular facility. We again report all that back to the property owner. Per the city code, the Public Works Director has the authority to adjust or correct errors in billing. How I've handled that as director typically is if we can, again, find something wrong in the billing process or the reading process, they will get the adjustment. If in the process we determine that water went through the meter but did not return to the wastewater system, so for example, if there was, again, someone left a hose outside, if there was a leak or a failure of a pipes of their pipe system in the basement, where again the water goes onto the floor, it's pumped out in the backyard, or if it's one of our dirt basements, we have many in the community, goes into that. We'll look at, and I will grant a adjustment to their sewer portion of the bill. Basically, the philosophy is on that is the city expends its resources when making the water, and if the water went through the meter, then it's therefore owed. On the wastewater side, the city does not expend any effort or cost if it does not go into the collection system to the treatment plant. So I will do adjustments to the sewer portion of their typical bills. Again, in this case, there was no demonstration that again, any water was not returned to the wastewater system. The property owner then also has the ability, if they wish, they can request to have the meter removed and test it. When that occurs, that testing cost is at the property owners. And this property owner did request in August of 2022 to have that existing meter removed and the current one tested. Again, we do have standard operating guidelines for testing of meters, which are consistent with the typical water industry. What we have is we have a system where there is a known quantity of water that is passed through over a period of time and we also put several other meters in line with the meter being tested to look at to make sure that that there's no issues. We run 3 tests. Those tests are a slow, medium, and high test. The slow test is at 3/4 of a gallon per minute. The medium test is at 2 gallons per minute, and the high test is at 15 gallons per minute. Then we also do an overnight test. Again, we have 2 sets of meters, and we basically let the water run through the 2 meters, and then we confirm that both meters are reading the amount. In this case, this particular meter did pass. It had 100% accuracy on the fast test, 101% accuracy on the medium test, and 94% accuracy on the slow test, and it did pass the overnight. Per the code, it does indicate that if the meter is within 2%, again, 2% of 100%, then it's deemed to be accurate. As I talked about before, today's meters, they're not like historically some of the old meters. People may remember them, where there used to be gears, et cetera, that were within the meter that had teeth that could chip off or break, typically, and then that could cause a digit to jump or a digit not to move, et cetera. Today's meters are sealed at the factory, meaning that there's no way for us to, or any department to go in and work with the meters. They are plastic, meaning all the gears and things there are plastic. The meters are also are not directly driven, connected to the meter head. What happens is there is a device that rotates when the water moves. It actually goes up to a magnet that turns, and then there's another magnet, then that turns the meter head. So typically, when a meter fails, it fails, meaning that when one of those teeth break within the meter head, it just stops. There is no longer a situation where numbers jump anymore or anything like that. It just fails. Same thing with the meter. If water is not running, that device does not turn. So it's not like it can phantomly turn and therefore have the head turn. So we're fairly confident in the new meters that, again, if there's a failure, it fails, and usually there's no reading on the meter when that occurs. Again, as I said, this meter is, at this point, still accurate, so we could not find anything on that. As per the city code, the city council is the final say on forgiving of rolls, charges, and any other fee associated with the water and sewer. At this point, I cannot recommend that you grant an abatement or an adjustment, because at this point, the meter has passed all tests, and therefore I have to determine that it is accurate.
Okay, so first issue would be the individual is not here, and his representative is not here. He's had opportunity, notice, there's been conversation with staff. I'm good to proceed, and to some extent, I think I could probably speak much of what he might say, being that running water and toilets and such are very much involved with property management, which is how I spend much of my day. And I've also been through this going back to before municipal services, facilities, and infrastructure. I've heard what happens. It is really, really unfortunate. Well-meaning, honest people come in with big bills, and if the water, and it's very simple, if the water goes through the meter, you have to pay for it. Why it went through the meter is not the responsibility of city staff. Also bearing in mind that this is a utility fund, the cost of consumption is spread across all the users. So it's not like we can just say, well, okay, if the water has been consumed and there's a charge, if it's not going to the individual, it's spread over everyone else. So just giving you a little background with that. Very, very dangerous, let me say, the running toilet, the dripping faucet. And I've heard really sad stories of things that have happened. But again, when you go back to the beginning, if the water goes through the meter, there's a charge. So I don't doubt that the resident feels very strongly that it's not right. But again, if it goes through the meter, you got to pay for it. And whether the meter has been tested and proven, that's good enough for me. But yes.
Thank you. Court, I have a question that you may or may not be able to answer, but you said in the 3-week period that you did the monitoring, everything appeared to be normal and return to normal usage. Do we happen to know the numbers currently? Has it remained consistent?
I have not looked at their consumption records, so I don't know if it's currently back. I'm just assuming, because we've been through, that property's probably been through, because this is June of '22, so that property's been through at least 2 more billings and have not been contacted that those billings were high.
I was going to say, you would likely hear something if they were, so, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking forward to hearing the petitioner's side of the story, but he's basically blown us off the last 2 meetings. We've invited him, he hasn't shown up, hasn't given reasons, so, if we can't hear the other side of the story, what are we gonna do? So unfortunately, we did bend over a couple times and extended this a couple of meetings so we could hear from him, but he's chosen not to show, so, we have no choice.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public want to speak on it? Committee, motion? Councilor Williams?
Move to recommend the request for abatement and fee waiver from John Sosnowski be denied.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Anything further from the public or committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now for the main event of the evening, once again about downtown. So a couple of opening remarks that I'd like to just throw out to the public. After speaking with the city attorney, I got a little clarity of what's going on. Can you give me some water too, please? And what I want to tell everyone, the committee and the public, that council workshop that we had last week and took a vote, that was a meeting. That was a meeting just like a city council meeting. That vote counts. And we were all getting along very well, and we're getting excited about the plans and this and that. And there were a lot of little issues that we probably wanted to talk a little more about. And I thought I would be able to maybe offer a couple of amendments or, just fine tune it a bit. Well, I have to apologize. I should have stuck by my guns and said, a council workshop might be a meeting, but you don't vote at a council workshop. And I'm going to ask that we make that into a rule of order in the future. But nonetheless, and therefore, we did vote. That's final. So therefore, we can talk all we want this evening, and I'm going to encourage that because I do have more to say on the subject, but we cannot amend what was done at this meeting. We were all happy. We drank the Kool-Aid. We voted. But we have accepted a concept. It's not the final answer. It's a concept. It's not a final plan. And I keep getting reminded, a lot of the issues that we want to talk about and we want to fine tune will come out in the plan. This is a concept, and that's fine. I'm good with that. But again, this evening, we cannot offer amendments. The only way that we can move forward to amend is to request reconsideration at the July 20 meeting. I'm saying this slowly so the media can get it. This is kind of important. Reconsideration can be offered by the mayor. It can be voted. It takes 2/3 of the council.
Majority, sorry. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it is a majority.
Simple majority. That's better. Okay. But it is a parliamentary action. Personally, I'm feeling a little maneuvered with this parliamentary business that's going on because I thought the MSFI committee had some sway in this, but we got to play by these rules. Going into this next council meeting, July 20, I will submit the notice to the clerk asking for reconsideration. I'm not asking at this moment why I want the reconsideration, but I want to give the council the ability to offer amendments to the concept plan. That will open to the council floor to allow amendments, and I'm not even saying what they might be. It could be anything, more planters, more trees, more specifics, bike lanes, no bike lanes, bigger bike lanes, whatever you want. But I think the council needs to take control of this process. And right now, it's a little close to that. So this evening,
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind to interrupt, because I do want to make sure that the committee understands that there is potentially a simpler process. than
Simpler.
that. Yes.
I missed that one.
And the simpler process, and that's why you have a proposed motion in front of you this evening. And the proposed motion is to adopt this concept C, to go up to the city council. Presumably, that will be seconded by somebody at the city council. Once the project is in front of the city council at that point, you can move to amend it as many times as you want. You can change it around, you can add things, you can remove things, you can put in a roundabout, you can take out a bike path. So my suggestion to the committee would be to take that route.
That sounds wonderful, but that's not how I understood what you said to me.
No, that was the second part of our conversation, that after we discussed it, that's a route that you can take. You don't have to file a motion for reconsideration if you, as a committee, vote to adopt this option C.
But the council has already adopted.
They did not adopt. Well, I have the motion in front of me. I'll read it
No,
for
okay,
you, if you don't mind.
you're the attorney,
Yep,
and if that's.
I'll read the motion.
I want the council to have the ability.
Yes,
to offer amendments to what's
exactly.
going on.
So the motion that was before the council, I have the verbatim transcript of the motion, just so everybody's clear. It was made by Councilor Workman, and she says verbatim, and I'd like to make that motion to move concept C, the multi-lane hybrid option, back to MSFI for public consideration and input. And so that it could come back on the 12th, so that a recommendation go to the full council for a final vote, right? So what you have in front of you isn't an adopted plan. The city council did not adopt option C at that point. What it did was to send option C back to you and to the public for further discussion. That doesn't preclude the city council on a proper motion before it from amending anything it wants within option C. It could turn option C back into the original plan that MSFI submitted. It could turn it back into the plan that Stantec, brought up to you all. That's still on the table at that point.
Okay, so the second part of, I'll call it my strategy, is still intact. We're not taking amendments this evening. We will take notes and perhaps offer amendments next Thursday.
Exactly. What I would
Fine,
suggest
good
is you
enough.
listen to the council, you listen to the members of the committee, and you decide at that point, and any member of the committee at that point, or the council in general, can, after listening to all of this, make a decision as to what you would like to try and move to amend on at that point.
Good enough, okay.
I'm sorry that part wasn't clear in our
It wasn't
conversation.
clear. It was, good, thank you. Okay, so we're basically back in the same place. Input from the committee and then input from the public.
Sounds like it's business as usual.
Making sausage, yeah. Okay, Councilor Roberts.
It may be a little bit semantic or whatever, how you use the words when we're talking concept and plan. Okay, we right now, I think, the way I look at it, we as a city council would be coming up with a concept. Once we come up with that concept, the engineers and the finance people and all that kind of stuff will come up and say, hey, your conceptual plan will cost $42 million. Then it goes, holy crap, nope, we're only going to spend $22 million. So a concept, then a plan meets fiscal reality, goes back to the engineers and saying, this is where your concept and your plan do not meet together. So city council, you now have to make adjustments. So what we're talking about is, we're talking about something next week that we may, quote unquote, come up with a concept that will be evolving over the next 2 years before the first shovel is ever put into the ground, because EPA rules may change, a whole bunch of things, because we don't know what 2 years from now is going to be. That's the way I look at it.
I think that's right, and you would hear that from our folks here at the table. You know, it's called value engineering, I think, in the trade.
Okay, so what we're looking for is comments regarding the plan, the concept, the concept. Get the right vocabulary going. Committee, you have anything yeah, Councilor.
And specifically, the concept as far as the layout goes, a lot of, as you had mentioned, a lot of what we are really looking at, and that the nitty-gritty details are parts that we'll discuss and eventually have other meetings, and I'm hoping MSFI likely, to discuss what the final design aspects look like. The plantings, the street lights and lamps we use, the lighting system, if we decide to have a lighting system, those things will be in those final design plans,
Yeah.
which the public will be able to have input on at that time.
A lot of the issues, or, small things that I think mean a lot to the committee, the council, and the public are what are being called final design issues. So I'm pretty sure the Public Works Director will say final design, and then that just goes into the background notes and.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Corporal Lundquist, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. I think you're correct. So tonight, just to help set the stage, the concept that had been worked on kind of has 4 components that that the council has sent down to you to hear public comment on. I'll start off with the easy one. Right now, the Gilbo Avenue raised table area, 2-way traffic, that concept is part of this project and part of the concept that in front of you, and is part of certainly any discussion this evening. Your Main Street concept, as you have been talking all along for what the council sent down to you, are the 2 lanes in both directions, north-south. There's no parking in the center. The no parking in the center allows the tightening up of the space, which allows right now the widening of sidewalks, the provision of a multimodal transportation lane of approximately 7 feet, and then also keeps the angled parking. And then on Central Square, you have moved forward a lighted intersection, and at this point, again, I use the word lighted intersection. The exact how that lighted intersection will work will be part of as we move into the next phase of the design, but it will be a lighted intersection using traffic signals of some type, some configuration, and that the existing traffic configuration around Central Square will remain, meaning how it moves today, the number of lanes that moves around today, those will remain in place. So that is the concept that you have in front of you that the council has sent back to you for you to receive public comment on. As the process that we're going through is typical of all our large projects. For example, those of you may remember Roxbury Street. We went through a selection of a type of bridge. We then went away, then we came back, presented the final components of that bridge, the several different types of railing systems, et cetera. Got feedback on that from the council, and then we went and did final design and put it out. I'm expecting a very similar process for the downtown project, that after the council has decided on these 4 functional concept areas that you want us to do, we will go and then begin the more detailed work. That's why you've heard me talk about, you see islands in certain places, and I have said, well, again, they fit, but may not be how they exactly look like, because we have to get through final design and more details on that. Same thing with things like landscaping, green infrastructure for stormwater, lights, all that has to be overlaid and put into place. And that will be a process probably that will take us through the fall into early next year, and then we'll probably be back to you sometime late winter to bring back a lot of the things that have been worked through to be able to have that next level of discussion. You've also received communications, for example, from the Heritage Commission. I'm expecting to have conversations with them about elements and things that they are interested in saying that could help maintain the themes, et cetera, that they are interested in maintaining. So, yep, you got the process correctly down. There are things tonight that these big picture things that you will be recommending to the full city council. Full city council will be selecting. Then we'll go off and do the next level of design effort. Come back, talk to you more about what those elements are. At that point, tweaking can occur. For example, you're not necessarily going to all of a sudden change over to 1 lane when we come back to you after we do this next level of work. We're going to come back with a 2 lane with sort of here's how we've worked out those 2 lanes. So hopefully that helps with sort of where we're at, what you're looking at doing this evening, and then what you can expect for the future.
Thank you. So, committee, you have anything further? Open to the public.
With that, I'm going to go back.
Comment, yep, from the back. And when you come up, name and address for the minute taker, please.
My name is Nancy Ancharsky. I live at 60 School Street in Keene. I commend the City Council for the information during the workshops that were held over the past 2 months. And I appreciate that Councilor Bosley was able to come up with a compromise for the downtown project. I understand that the vote needed to go forward last week, although tonight was a little confusing. But no one has addressed a very short declarative sentence in Stantec's description of option C. And that sentence is, in this hybrid option, 60 trees would be removed. This is almost double the amount of trees to be taken down in the MSFI MSFI approved concept. Why 60 trees? Is there anyone who can tell me if the trees will be replanted along the Main Street and Central Square sidewalks in option C? Anybody? Maybe someday. It appears to me that there would be no space to replant trees because of the location of the bike path. The MSFI concept has 32 trees being removed, 14 of which are said to be diseased. With the MFSI concept, I believe all 32 trees could probably be replaced, and maybe even more trees could be replaced along Main Street and Central Square sidewalks. If no trees can be replanted, it seems that except for the trees in the median, we would be returning to the stark-looking Keene downtown of the 1970s. It means that in our increasingly hot summers, our downtown sidewalks would have no shade. There would be no shade on the bike paths, no shade on the outdoor cafes, no shade for pedestrians shopping and strolling, no shade on the downtown buildings. In removing 60 trees, the buildings would need more energy for cooling. In removing 60 trees, temperatures downtown would rise, air quality would suffer. In removing 60 trees, Keene's downtown beautification projects installed over the last 20 years would be destroyed. If we permanently lose 60 trees, I'm afraid we might lose our downtown.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Jim?
Jim Sterling, 197 Jordan Road. Everybody talks about the trees that are being removed. Nobody asked the question if they can be replaced. Kurt was walking in, and I just talked to him, and there's been no plan yet to have the new landscaping. The trees can be replaced, maybe different spots, maybe even more. But I don't want this to keep being perpetuated that they can't be replaced. Also, she talks, about the environmental issues. So let's remove bike lanes. Let's not have electric bikes. Let's not have things that are going to help the pollution and all of the environmental issues that are going on. It's just ridiculous. I wish just people would ask the next question, because all they heard was trees are going to be removed. That's in the construction process. They have to be removed. We haven't even done the design yet. They can be put back.
Thank you. And I would say, as far as I'm concerned, the trees will be put back and the plantings will be replaced. But that is final design, so hopefully we'll hear more. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ken Cost, Stonehouse Lane. And in spite of all the discussion about, I heard making sausage, this is a good process. I think we get a lot of input and a lot of involvement, so I appreciate it. When I look at this plan, this concept, I see it's a skeleton. It's there's nothing on it yet, and it's the skeleton. So it's telling us those are the lanes, that's the parking, and there's the building, and there's the setbacks, and there's the places where things can go. And that's really all it is. And so I think there's going to be a lot of time. I would hope there's going to be some very talented designers and urban designers and landscape architects and everyone else who's going to get involved, and we're going to see some really wonderful things. We're not looking at that now, so I think this whole conversation about trees, yeah, I think they definitely have to be there, and I think there'll be places for them, and I think we'll be able to work it in. I do want to just make sure all this conversation about bike lanes, I think this building to building at Gilbo, at least what I could see on the plans, is 155 feet. That's a lot. We're asking for 5 to 14 feet to be devoted to, I would start calling them mobility lanes, maybe more than bike lanes. I mean, you have bike lanes, so there's bicyclists, there's going to be people in all kinds of other ways that they want to get around. And so I think those are very critical in a multimodal downtown. And so I hope that as we go forward, the bike lanes are a priority. They're not something that could be put in but taken out later if we don't want them. It's very, very important. And I think we're going in that direction, and this concept does allow that to happen. And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up, because I hadn't heard it yet, but I know it was supported, but I just want to make sure it's on the table, is the underlying infrastructure, that there will be utilities in place to support public restrooms somewhere. And I really hope that stays. I think it's very, very important. My wife and I just took a little trip to North Conway about a month ago, and they had a great outdoor bathroom. We both used it. It was very important. I think it's just an important thing to have downtown for so many different reasons we don't have to get into now. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay.
Hi, Lori Jameson, Marlboro, Vermont, but I consider shopping Keene shopping locally. So, bike lanes aren't going to help me at all unless I get one of those motorized scooters. But you've seen the weather this past week, and that is our new normal. And this is our last chance to change that and turn it around. So I am totally for mobility lanes. I also want to say regarding public restrooms, having been a pregnant young woman in Keene and having a young child, public restrooms get to be pretty important. And I was fortunate to have been pretty regular at Lindy's Diner. So thankfully, George and Arietta let me use their bathroom, whether I was eating there or not. I'd also say, if you've ever had a UTI, or if you're elderly, public restrooms are essential. I moved here from the shopping mecca of Manchester Center, Vermont, and they have beautiful public restrooms, and it allows people to continue shopping till they drop. So I hope you'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the gentleman, yes, you. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kendall Lane, 5 Hastings Avenue, Keene. Two quick comments about the concept. And I mean, personally, I think the concept is a good concept. I think it's something that's workable. I think that it will benefit the city. First off, between Church Street and Central Square are 3 lanes of traffic. I question whether 3 lanes once the parking is removed from the center of Main Street, I question whether 3 lanes of traffic are necessary or appropriate. Right now, for somebody crossing Main Street, they have to get to the center of Main Street, they have to cross 3 lanes of traffic. For somebody that's young, for a college student, that's fine. For somebody that's older, For somebody that has mobility issues, for somebody that may be in a wheelchair, that's a challenge. In fact, it's almost impossible. The center lane between Church Street and Main Street is really a problem. And as you work on this concept, that should be removed. If you choose not to remove it, at the very least, you should put a bump out in the center of Main Street so that the inside lane does not go all the way through. So that if somebody's crossing Main Street, they are only crossing 2 lanes of traffic, not 3. The other problem that the 3 lanes of traffic create is that for a motor vehicle, after you go through those lights, it reduces to 2 lanes. If somebody, about 75% of the people using that center lane are actually just doing a U-turn to head south on Main Street. But for the other 25%, if they want to go out Washington Street, they're cutting across 2 lanes of traffic. If they want to go out Court Street, they're cutting into another lane of traffic. So that's a dangerous situation, and this is an opportunity to correct that as you work on this concept. And I would hope that next Thursday, somebody will offer an amendment to eliminate that center lane. Eliminating that center lane would also give you more space so you could widen the sidewalks on that side of Main Street and make them more pedestrian friendly. My other comment is one that is a little bit premature, but it's something that I want you to keep in mind. At the intersection of Court Street and Central Square, we have a problem. Cars coming down Court Street, we are supposed to yield to traffic going around Central Square. Some do, many do not. We've had pedestrians get hit. We've had, Randy lived just over that intersection for quite some time. I'm sure he heard the horns as they go off. I was going around that intersection a couple of days ago, and somebody came down Court Street, got partway into Central Square, was blocking traffic, so cars were all blocked up, and then gave everybody the finger because he wanted the right of way and wanted them to get out of the way, even though the cars on Central Square actually had the right of way. Whether you correct it with a stop sign, which would have to be enforced by the police, so we'd actually have to have police downtown for a change. That would be a unique experience for a lot of us. Or whether you have some other way to deal with that, that intersection is a problem that needs to be dealt with as you go through this concept. The engineers may have some magical ways that they can deal with that, but you need to keep that in mind, that intersection is dangerous, and somebody's going to get killed at that intersection one of these days. Beyond that, I'm strongly in favor of increasing pedestrian mobility and increasing mobility alternatives in the downtown. I think that as we look at this concept, this moves very strongly in the right direction. I'm very happy with it, and I hope that as you make tweaks to it, which you will do, and which you should do, and which the process allows you to do, you will keep in mind what the ultimate goal is, which is to improve and better the center of Keene. Our front yard, the first thing anybody sees when they come into this community. And that's an important factor that you have to consider. In the 8 years that I was mayor, people would come up to me from out of town. People would come up to me. I mean, I had somebody from Alabama come up to me and said, "You've got a gem here." And we do have a gem here. We need to keep that gem. We need to improve it. We need to deal with the issues that we see every day and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Dr. Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Jay Kahn, 135 Darling Road in Keene. So a few thoughts. I always keep in mind my years at Keene State, over 28 years, and having replicated some of the look of downtown in the campus's design, an award-winning design that I think we all really enjoy. It's certainly a lot different from 1988. Since 1988, though, when the city implemented the plan that we now see today, which I agree has been very successful, there are two environmental trends that have shifted. One is the city made a decision to allow outdoor dining, a good decision, prescient in light of the recent pandemic, and something that all of us enjoy. A second is multimodal transportation. So now we take what is the clearest value of downtown and its design, which is a walkable downtown, and begin to add additional values based on changing demographics, changing trends. And if we're going to try to accommodate all three, what I am encouraging the committee is all three of those values need to fit. Having designed a lot of sidewalks, each person takes 3 feet. We heard that again from your consultants. And if you've got 2 people walking in one direction and 2 people walking in another direction, you have a 12-foot sidewalk. Sometimes that's 3 people, a family with 1 young child, and they will walk 3 abreast, and need to have the ability for at least 1 person to move in the opposite direction. 12 feet for a sidewalk, I believe, is a requirement. It's the walkable city requirement. How you fit it in, I'll leave to this committee and the council. But we can't lose the walkable city. We can see that commercial and retail viability is crucial in Main Street, and we've lost some of that. And what will bring it back is to have more housing and more walkable areas in the downtown area. And Jeff Speck picked it out right away. He said some of the most buildable properties in all of the city are on city-owned land downtown. So if we're taking a look to the future, it's got to be something in our vision. More housing in downtown will bring the commercial and retail viability that we hope our downtown will be able to sustain. So, as Speck said, when you bring back housing, you make downtowns sing. And I believe it. I think we all do. So, a walkable downtown, accommodating some new interests in outdoor dining, multimodal transportation is important. As Speck said, when it comes to walkable downtowns, they need to be interesting and comfortable. So we can't be squeezing this and making people feel like they're competing with other interests. It has to fit. And it means the trees are an important part of the design, as people have already said. And to maintain those values, if it's required to have to step back and say, did we discard the 3-lane of traffic, 2 lanes with a turning lane? Did we discard that too quickly? I hope you'll come back and give it some thought and test it. Because the values are important here, and you lead with your values. And if you can see the values in the plan, you got a success. But the plan needs to accommodate the values. And right now, I think you're pressing the envelope of being able to, of having to compromise on some of those values with this plan. It's going to be your decision as to how well those are all accommodated, walkable, multimodal, outdoor dining opportunities. And it may be that the 3-lane provides something that the current model with 2 lanes on both sides does not. I just ask that you make sure, stick to the values, stick to your values. The design will follow.
Thank you. I'll go to that side of the room, and then I'll come back again.
Good evening, I'm Debbie Bowie, 659 Hurricane Road. Thank everybody for being here. Back in March, I submitted a letter to the mayor and to the city council requesting a report addressing questions posed in that letter. At this time, I'm still unable to answer many of the questions that were included in that letter. I'm asking the council to consider if there's sufficient information to make an informed decision. Some of the areas that remain unclear are one of them is pedestrian safety. What will be done to control the speeds of vehicles on Main Street? What efforts have been made to provide accessibility for fire safety? Can the public access the police and fire department recommendations on this plan? Do they exist? What will the rules be on the bike lanes? How will bicyclists be educated regarding these rules? How will bicycle regulations be enforced and by whom? What regulations will be in place regarding electrical devices on the bike lanes? What's the exact cost of the proposal? I understand that we may not have that, but we need to have some guidelines on what this city can afford to pay for this proposal. I'd like to see what it's going to cost just for the necessary improvements. And then with the addition of the bike lanes. And then I'd like to see how much this would impact our Keene taxpayers through a dollar amount, that gives maybe the dollar amount on $100,000 of a property value so that that can be understood by all the taxpayers in the city. We know it's necessary to update the water and the sewer infrastructure. What additional upgrades are essential to take care of during this infrastructure plan? And what additional city projects hold a high priority and might be postponed as the consequence of these expenditures? What residents and City of Keene councilors require are clear and transparent facts on this program. I personally find it difficult to understand how we can have a vote that lacks clarity and comprehensiveness. Thank you.
Those are excellent questions, and my question, who's going to answer them?
Many of them are final design questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
if you could, tell it to.
Yeah, well, many of the questions
Ms. Bowie.
that were just asked are part of the final design process, as Court was explaining earlier. In order to give you costs, you'll have to have a design, and then you'll have to decide what sort of things you want to add, and then you'll get your final number. And then from that number, we'll be able to give you a cost impact to the tax rate.
Okay. Can you resend your letter, please? Ms. Bowie?
And I'll send this also.
To attention city manager, and she can disseminate it wherever it's got to go. Yes, sir, back there.
My name's Kenneth Stewart. I live at 11 Algonquin Drive in Keene. And the comments I have, I think, relate to some degree to what Jay Kahn said about values and what Councilor Roberts said about cost. And as we roll forward, and it's maybe a little bit premature, I'm wondering about how the interaction between our design values and the possibility of obtaining grants will work. And I know that you can't address that now, and that as you go through the process further, you'll begin to get more insight into that. And so what I guess I'm thinking about is that we want to have a transparent process where, as we learn more about the design values that may be embedded in grant applications and whether we're able to get more or less money based on those design values, that we need to hear about those trade-offs. And they may involve modifying the design, the concept that we have now, and as we go forward. And certainly, I guess I was motivated by that, by, being well aware of the fact that we have a pretty high property tax rate here. I think we only have $7 million in the CIP, to the extent I was able to read it now, and I think the number is going to be at least double that. So it would be nice to have as much of that as possible offset by grants. And at first I thought these grant numbers might be kind of modest, until I stumbled across an article in the Union Leader which stated that the City of Manchester is getting, under the RAISE funding from DOT, $25 million to rebuild one intersection. And that's in the capital phase of this. They have until 2029 to actually do the project. They only have to come up with $5 million, 20% of the cost. So I started thinking about, well, if we're able to play our cards right on design values that enable us to get maximum grants, and we're able to cut the cost to the taxpayers down to 20% of this project, which will probably be more than the $15 million before we're all done, then that would be a good thing to know. And to the extent we're making trade-offs between design choices and the amount of grant money that we're going to get, pleading for an open process where we have discussions about those trade-offs and they're all clear to everybody, just as we've had discussions about these different alternatives as we've moved forward to this point. So that's just a plea for looking at design values, grants, trade-offs between that, property taxes, and potential effect on, as someone mentioned, other CIP projects that may have to get modified, pushed out, or eliminated now that we're dealing with something twice the cost than what, at least as far as I can read, a 200-plus page document says is $7 million, and it's now doubled. So it's just that comment, and I hope that as the design process goes further, we are able to see what those trade-offs look like and how we're doing getting the maximum amount of grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Striped shirt lady, hello. Hello.
Hi, my name's Joji Robertson. I live at 40 Dickinson Road in Keene. I had a few things on here that have already been addressed, so I will save you a little bit of time with that. But one of my requests would be that we separate the infrastructure project from the redesign. Let's fix first what we know needs to get fixed, get hard numbers on that. No businesses, no residents, no anyone's going to be downtown if we don't have water and sewer. So I think that it might allow us more time to fully develop and really think through and make sure we get it right as far as the redesign if we're doing that. Part of what brings people to Keene is our downtown, so this is critically important. I don't know the current state of the water and sewer, like how close are we to failure and then having to, we got to spring a leak, we've got to fix this, we've got to fix that, and it's kind of being slowed down because of what the pretty picture is going to be at the end. I would also request that we do a full traffic study of the downtown area, not just Main Street. As we all know, Central Square is kind of where all of the funnels end up and merge together. I think that there's a lot of traffic that goes through downtown that's through traffic. If we could look at the surrounding streets, maybe some one-way streets connecting Court Street and Washington Street to scoot around. Same thing on the east side, but really think about maybe some one-way traffic lanes to allow people to go around town. I'm a bike rider. I personally believe bikes don't belong on Main Street. A couple of people have mentioned we're trying to fit a lot of things into a certain width. I think if we had them a block off, the bikes that want to get through town could have dedicated space where maybe there's more space so that it frees up Main Street for cars, pedestrians, cafes, and those types of things. It's not that I don't appreciate electric bikes, pedaled bikes. I ride. I personally ride on Main Street. I've done it my whole life. Maybe it's just because I'm used to it and I don't know enough to be afraid, but I seem to manage. The other thing that I hope that we consider, and I know that this is going to come later, but we talked about the trees. I do believe we'll be adding trees in. I don't think they're going to be in the same place. I think there'll be a strip down the middle, and then I think there'll be a few spotted in along the sidewalks. But with that, it's going to make the edges of Main Street look like a parking lot. And then when you get down to Central Square and along Main Street, there's going to need to be a lot more signage than what we have now. Think about when you're coming across Route 12 and you're coming into the roundabout. You see big signs. This lane is for Winchester Street. This is for Marlboro. This is for Winchester. Are we going to have that type of signage hanging across our Main Street? Like, I think it's important because it's going to need to happen, just like someone was talking about how dangerous Court Street intersection is with the square, right? You fix that with signage, but all the way around, like how do we make pedestrians follow the rules with crossing the street? How do we get motorists to follow the rules? And perhaps more police presence is going to be key to some of these safety issues. But I do hope that we think long and hard about what options are out there for signage, because that's going to be key to the success of whatever we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, back there. Yep.
My name is Autumn Delacroix. I live on 618 Court Street. Earlier, the issue of pedestrian safety was brought up, and I kind of want to address that specifically. I would argue that the number one risk to pedestrian safety is the length of the crosswalks. They're very long right now. It takes a very long time to cross. You're crossing 4 lanes of traffic, and many people have said it already, not tonight, but previous nights. The first lane stops, the second lane doesn't. That's very scary. Anything we can do to shrink those crosswalks, bring them in, will make them safer. It's been brought up that we're losing trees and that there's a 3rd lane exiting Main Street as you enter the rotary. Adding that, removing that lane adds extra space that trees can be planted, and it shortens that head crosswalk that sees so much traffic. That could be very helpful. Similarly, raised crosswalks do a lot to make crossing safer. It reminds cars that they are entering pedestrian spaces. Similarly, bike lanes and their crossings being raised have the same effect. Also, the issue of e-bikes and their safety was brought up. I just want to bring up the fact that there are classes of e-bikes already that are regulated by the state and federal government to some degree. Class 3 e-bikes are the ones that go really, really fast. They are legally motorcycles. They have to abide by all laws that motor vehicles have to and would not be allowed on bike lanes already. That's not an issue the city has to consider. It's already been thought of. On top of that, I'm sure sometime there will be some bad actor who does something terrible. There's a funny thing, just a little bit of science here. The force of a collision is related to both the speed, which is the concern here, and the weight. The speed is a linear equation. Going a little faster will make it do more. The weight is a much bigger proportion. It is quadratic. So if a 200-pound bicyclist strikes somebody, they will hit with 1/100th of the force that a car at a ton would be doing. Because 200 pounds to 2,000, it's 1/10 the weight. It's quadratic, 1/100th of the force. There are very, very few bad injuries from cyclists, including e-bikes, even at high speeds. Yeah, I think that's most of what I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Way back there. No, well, you be next.
Thank you all.
Hello.
Hi there. My favorite committee, of course, having been on it for 12 years, so it's great to be here. Jan Manwaring, 50 Belmont Avenue. So this is the first time I've come to one of these and made a comment, but I thought what I really wanted to say was I became a counselor because of the comprehensive master plan. And that one of the things that was really important was a walkable city. And a commitment to multimodal, the new word, transportation, to promoting an active lifestyle and safety, of course, which meant good sidewalks, eventually bike lanes. So that was in September of 2010. I wasn't yet a counselor. As a counselor, in June of 2012, we passed the active and passive recreation plan. And the first recommendation was better connecting of the bike system to downtown, to work, to that sort of thing. And the second was more open space. I had to just throw that in, being an open space fan. In the fall of 2015, we passed the Complete Streets Plan. And again, that focus was making it possible to have more walkability, more sidewalk safety, more bicycle safety. And again, this is all before the big electric things. Then in probably the last thing I did, 2020, was the Sustainable Energy Plan that we passed, which said we were going to be 100% renewable energy by 2050. And of course, it's about this thick, if you remember that. I think all you were here at that time. So the question was, how do we do that? And one of the ways to do that was to reduce vehicle miles driven. So, and the way you do that is multimodal transportation, making it safe to walk, making it safe for bikes. And again, same theme. Listen, we've really done a great job, I think. So in 2022, as part of the Bicycle Pedestrian Path Advisory Committee, we brought to you strengthening connections downtown and trails, these big long names I never can remember. And so that was surveys. We did a lot of surveys. We worked with the UNH Cooperative Extension to show that there really is, by having folks come walk and bike on the trails, that they come into the downtown, they buy specialty things that we have in some of our shops. They look for a bike shop often, of course, and the biggest one, of course, is restaurants. So all these things sort of, I just see this pattern of us moving forward, and I really want to encourage you to keep the bike lanes in there, to focus on the safety, on the sidewalks. And by 2030, my understanding is 30% of our population here in this area are going to be people like me, old people, and we don't move as fast. So think of us too. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you were up. No, well, whoever's coming. Not, yes, you. You be next.
Walter Lacey, 230 Daniels Hill Road. Although I am a dedicated bicyclist, I would like to speak against having bike lanes included in the downtown reconstruction project. I have bicycled all my life and enjoyed opportunities to ride in other parts of the country. My current 11-year-old road bike has 10,000 miles on it. I am a huge advocate of increased bicycle access and accommodation, but I'm also a realist and believe that safety is paramount. The depicted bike lanes appear to introduce new hazards to pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists as well. I see no benefits to me as a cyclist, only new conflicts and problems. Presently, for example, if I'm coming up Main Street, planning to go north on Court Street, I only have to contend with crosswalk, pedestrians, and the traffic light at Roxbury Street, and I'm on my way. Following the bike lane, there are 6 street crossings: Water, Dunbar, Eagle Court, Cypress, Railroad, Church, if you're counting, before I even get to Roxbury Street. At each of these crossings, there are hazards. It is difficult enough for a motorist to see pedestrians on the sidewalk, but I submit virtually impossible to see a bicycle traveling at 10 or 12 miles an hour, and most likely out of view. The west side of Main Street has similar street crossing issues. I count 5. Pedestrian traffic crossing the bike lane between parking and a store or restaurant is a new hazard that's introduced. 10 or 12 miles per hour doesn't seem like much, but as a pedestrian, a bicycle can appear in an instant and a collision serious. As a cyclist, my ideal path is unobstructed, good pavement ahead, no conflicts. These bike lanes don't do that. These bike lanes are one way, I assume. Do you really think that that will be obeyed? What of e-bikes and their increasing popularity? They are capable of relatively high speeds with little rider effort. Do they belong in these lanes? I foresee significant policing problems. This project should instead be the opportunity to integrate bicycles, particularly the new generation of e-bikes, into the downtown traffic mix in a meaningful way. Develop a traffic plan, pavement dimensions, and speed limits that include bicycles as part of the traffic flow. Inform and educate the public, drivers, and cyclists as to their rights and responsibilities, and enforce the law. In my view, the bike lanes as drawn are unrealistic and hazardous. Thank you.
Thank you. Way back, yeah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Roland Russell, 77 High Street. I would like to address some misconceptions that have been around some of the multimodal transportation issues. And to do that, I've gone through over 20 studies that I found around multimodal transportation. And I did an open search on economic impacts of protected bike lanes as part of my research. And it's important to note the word impact. I didn't search on benefits, I searched on impact. I did not find any negative impacts on the economy. I'll get to that. I want to start with ridership increase. There's been a misconception that people don't ride downtown. They won't ride downtown even with bike lanes. If we build it, they will come. The average protected bike lanes sees bike ridership increase 75% in the first year alone. Chicago, 56%. Montreal, 61%. Philadelphia, 95%. San Francisco, 115%. New York Prospect Park West, 190%. Washington, D.C. saw a 7-fold increase on protected bike lanes over non-protected bike streets. Safety. 96% of people using protected bike lanes believe they increase safety on the street. Streets with protected bike lanes saw 90% fewer injuries per mile than those with no bike infrastructure. Columbus Avenue, New York City, Bicycling increased 56% on weekdays, and crashes decreased 34%. 9th Avenue, New York City. Local businesses saw a 49% increase in retail sales, but also a 56% reduction in injuries to all street users, including 57% reduction to people on bikes and 29% reduction to people walking. There are 4 ways protected bike lanes boost economic growth from the League of American Bicyclists report. They fuel redevelopment, especially housing, to boost real estate value. They help companies score talented workers. They make workers healthier and more productive. Active transportation. Increasing retail visibility and sales volume. In New York City's Union Square, 49% fewer commercial vacancies compared to 5% more throughout Manhattan. That's important to keep in mind. We don't like to see empty storefronts downtown. We never like to see that. Protected bike lanes and the people and the increased traffic it brings helps those stores stay in business. In Portland, Oregon, people who traveled to a shopping area by bike spent 24% more per month than those who traveled by car. Other studies found similar trends in Davis, California, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Melbourne, Australia, and New Zealand. New Zealand. Central Avenue in Minneapolis. Food sales had a 52.4% increase, and retail employment increased by 12.6%. I also include in this write-up, and I'll leave it with someone, if there's someone I can leave it with tonight. While it's true that Keene can apply for grant programs without active transportation, multimodal transportation in its plans, it's scored very highly. And the list I found, and I went through all the guidelines for them, there are 10, at least 10, and I'm sure Don and Court have the list already, of multi-million-dollar grants. RAISE was brought up, that's one of them, that will help reduce the taxpayer burden by the presence of things like multimodal transportation inclusion. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say, I love our downtown, I love our businesses, and I want those businesses to survive, and multimodal transportation will help those businesses immensely. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie.
Thank you and good evening. Connie Joyce, 81 Grant Street. I have lived and worked in Keene professionally for 60 years. I really love Keene. People come to Keene because they admire the way it is. Yes, it is a little quirky, but it is a small town of 22,000 people. The parking is limited and expensive. The downtown stores do not stay open past the dinner hour. Keene is historic. It is charming. It is highly functional just the way that it is. Taxpayers can afford it the way it is, but will not be able to afford it with increased tax bills. The list of needs versus wants is a tragedy. We have just had torrential rain. Did you notice any drainage issues or damage to downtown? The old pipes held. No one has produced any maintenance records to prove that there have been major issues downtown. We have no data on the need for bike lanes. This is monumental. The safety of downtown walkers is a major concern. Imagine getting out of your car to pay the meter, and then a biker who might be talking on his Bluetooth runs into you. Or walking in front of City Hall and a biker comes up behind you and you step in front of them to re-enter your car and you're hit by the biker. Older people like me need safety and expect safety. We need to be able to feel that we can walk downtown safely. Do not allow any bike lanes around the square. There is no room. It is too dangerous for everyone. If you can pedal a bike, you can walk a bike and care about the safety of others. Bikers can walk to a bike stand and park. If you care about safety issues, focus on West Street because there are no bike lanes and many people who reside at the Keene Inn must use a bike. Have you achieved adding safe bike lanes elsewhere in the city? Before you go any further with this hybrid plan, the city needs to paint the proposed bike lanes and walking lanes so that residents and visitors can see what this would look like. The one-dimensional plan by Stantec Consultants does not clarify the intended lanes. This should have been done. This is late planning. Significant trees will be removed. I heard 60 in all. Again, these trees need to be marked in vibrant paint so that people know which ones will be removed and what downtown Keene will look like without the ambiance of our old-growth trees. The entire project needs to be delayed so that the citizens of Keene have visuals of these plans. Let the people see what you want to do before you damage our city forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter? No. Somebody get up. No, not all of you at once. Sorry, Peter, you be up next.
Pam Slack, Keene. My first question is actually to the city attorney through you. Mr. Chair, if I can ask him a question?
Yep.
Okay, at the very, is
Well,
that
to be clear,
appropriate?
Whether I answer it or not is still on the table. Go ahead.
That's totally up to you, Tom. So at the very beginning of the at the very beginning of the meeting, you made it quite clear that the vote that was taken at the city council workshop, it was not a city council meeting. It was a city council workshop, and that's how it went out, and that it was legal. And I understand that. But what I want to bring up, in which some of the councilors, I sent a letter out to the councilors before this meeting, that if a vote was taken at a city council workshop, that would set a precedent. Is that true? Did they set a precedent by voting at the city council workshop the other night?
I will answer the question because it's on everybody's mind at this point. I understand that at some point in the past, there was sort of a pattern or practice for the city council not to take a vote at a workshop. But that was never codified anywhere.
Mm-mm.
The city's code of ordinances that apply, 91A applies. When the city council meets as a quorum in a room that's publicly noticed, it's acting as a city council. And it can take a vote if it wants to take a vote. But it's really up to the city council and or in the committee, whether or not to do that. So the city council did have the authority to take this vote last Thursday. Now, I understand that you have a proposal.
Yes, I
that's
do.
going into FOP tomorrow night that will be
Well, actually,
discussed.
no, I've changed it until next month. My grandchildren are here, and this is my second meeting this week, so I've kind of,
Yeah.
they can
That's
wait.
perfectly up to you. But there is a proposal to codify that into the rules of order. And if the city council wants to do that, it's certainly up to the authority of the city council to limit the practices that may happen at a workshop. The second question, if the city council decides to go that route, is, we'll have to define what constitutes a workshop. There's already in the city council rules a provision for a specially called meeting. A specially called meeting falls under all of the rules of the city council at this point. But a workshop doesn't appear in the rules, and it really doesn't appear anywhere in statute at this point. So regardless of what may have happened or how people feel about it, it was a proper act from my perspective of the city council, for the city council to take.
Okay, continue.
I appreciate the explanation. To many people, it's not clear, and that would include several councilors as well. So, and I just wanted that on the record. So, the other night also, Court Bloomquist stated that the plans for this, the discussions of this project started in 2017. We're in 2023. We knew that this project was going to have to take place. What money, and this, maybe you may be able to answer it, but if not, maybe the city manager can, what money is available in the CIP for this project?
Might take me a minute, but.
I'll wait.
All right.
Capital improvement plan.
Yes, please.
So the capital reserve as of January 31st had $1.988 million and change. We used in.
Put your mic on, please.
Can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Try that again. The capital reserve on January 31st had $1.9 million reserved. That reserve started in just, I think, before around 2017. In fiscal '25, we allocated $500,000 for the work that's been happening. And then in addition to that, we have a TIF district that is adding approximately $225,000 per year to the reserve account.
Okay, so we've known since 2017 that that's all we have. That's a serious concern for me because of the amount of money that this project is going to cost. I realize that we're applying for grants, but you can't apply for a grant until you have a project. Those are just my comments. So I just wanted to address something else regarding public bathrooms. For me, it's a balancing act, and I'm not sure everyone here knows the history. The public bathrooms used to be located at the transportation center. They were closed, one, because there was a fire started in one of them, which kind of destroyed the bathroom. The other one, there was a woman that was raped. Both of those bathrooms were closed, and I don't know if any of the counselors sitting here tonight know that there's been a lot of recent vandalism at Robin Hood Park. Guess where? The bathrooms. So I'm not sure how, if you do decide to do public bathrooms downtown, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to monitor the bathrooms? So please just keep that in mind if you decide to go that route. But my understanding, there are public bathrooms available downtown right here at City Hall and the library. The other thing I wanted to address is I kind of like this design, but what's the destination for these bikes? Where are they going? They're coming down Main Street, kind of ends at Emerald Street. Where are they going? Can somebody please tell me that? Anybody? I'm not asking you.
Excuse me, guys. Jim, no.
I don't think you work for the city. And I think that's a question you need to ask. What's the destination here? You can turn off onto the bike path where the railroad tracks used to be, right or you can go right or left over near Railroad Street. But after that, what's the destination? There's no bike lanes further down, and there's no bike lanes going off any of the side streets. So I just think you really need to consider that. If some of the councilors decide to pursue multimodal transportation, all bicycles should be registered, including electric bikes. Fines imposed if they're not registered. Bicycles, my understanding, have to be registered at the Keene Police Department now, although I'm not quite sure how you're going to keep track of that if we have electric bikes coming downtown or whatever modal transportation you're talking about. But they need to be registered. And the one thing I do want to say that's positive from this is I'm happy with the decision with Gilboa Ave. I think that should stay the same. There is a raised sidewalk down there, and it does work very well. I don't know why there aren't any others in the city, but there is one there. There might be one on Main Street. It's not consistent. The fact that they have not, the lighted intersection's going to stay the same, and the existing square remains the same, although I can't quite understand. It seems like it's a bit larger, so that's the question that I have. I believe it is a little bit larger. And so I guess your big question here from the majority of the people that are sitting here that that I can hear is that the concept for this particular plan, which is a widening of the sidewalks and then adding the bicycle lanes, but it also looks to me like you have taken some space away from some of the businesses around the square that might not allow them to have outdoor seating. And I can't it wasn't really clear to me when it was presented during the meeting, so maybe at some point, one of the counselors could ask that question. I know you've all put a lot of time into this, and I really, really appreciate it. And I'm hoping at some point, if the council does take a vote this month, which it looks like they're going to, that at some point it does come back to this committee and the public still has input. Because my understanding is this is the last time we'll actually be able to sit and speak to you about what concerns we have. And this is also just a reminder, I'm part of the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, the youngest one is 59. So the baby boomer generation is going to be around here for about, 12, 13 more years. We're talking about a serious senior population. And I think, I'm not quite positive that senior citizens in Keene feel like they're being listened to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think a lot of the answers to these questions will come, as they keep saying, in the final design, because I asked the same things, and what I was told is that this concept will shift, and the shape of the square will shift a bit. Some of the intersections, the little bump outs and this and that will shift to solve a lot of the issues and problems that you're alluding to.
Thank you, but the thing is this is when we have our opportunity to give
yeah.
you public input, and so unless we talk about it, you're not going to know what a lot of us want.
That's why we're here.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What? Yeah. Oh, go.
I just wanted to add a little bit more information related to Pam's question related to the capital reserve and the capital plan. I answered the question as to how much we had and how much we've raised so far, but the capital plan actually goes through fiscal '27, and that plan included funding for the original amount of the project, which was just over $7.4 million. And that funding went through fiscal '27, which was the original date the project was intending to be funded.
Okay, so each year from, 2025, 26, 27, you're adding more money to, okay, but to this point today, there's very little there. And I'm not really positive how much has been spent from that. I'm sorry.
I believe it's approximately just under $500,000.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Peter, way back.
Good evening, council members, and thank you for this chance to speak. I was at the MFSI meeting the last time, and as I remember, the conclusion of that meeting resulted in a recommendation to the city council. Is my mic on?
Yeah, on your
Okay.
address, please.
That the bike paths be not presented as a plan, and that the city council then voted against that idea that the MFSI had proposed, and now we're back at MFSI, basically, with this concept. So here goes. This is what I want to say, and thank you for not having a time limit. This whole process has been unprofessionally slanted right from the very beginning. There was never a chance to register no change. It's always been a question, what change are we going to do? And I believe that if there'd been a tally of people who could have possibly voted saying no change, that would have been an overwhelming response. A very small segment of the population ever did vote on any of the proposals during the summer. I don't have the figures in front of me, but they barely crest 100 sometimes. So we're talking about a small population that voted on some proposals that were presented only as the ones that could be possibly voted on, which involved change. And so here we are. So I'd like to look at the pros and cons of the hybrid option. And first, I'd like to commend Mayor Lane for mentioning how we have a gem of a city here. And we're going to lose it. What's existing now will be eradicated. 60 trees are going to come down. There will be a median down Main Street that'll look just like every parking lot in every mall and grocery store place that is. It'll be a single line of trees, perhaps intermingled with some street lights, just as we have further down Main Street. And then there'll be the little islands next to the parking, and those islands will possibly have trees as well. But they're also, let's not forget maintenance, snow removal. The islands today are used, and they're much larger, I think, than these, to mound up the snow where Main Street is, when the parking area on Main Street is plowed, and then those piles have to be removed. So I don't believe that these little islands along the parking strip are going to accommodate much of that. Okay, so going on with the cons, there are no flower beds. They will have to be removed to provide space for the bike lanes. And there's no tree canopy left anymore, no spring flowering trees. The crosswalks across Main Street will hit the median, which is now much narrower than what it would have been with the angled parking as it exists now, because you can actually walk from one side of the angled parking to the other side of the angled parking, praising the situation, resting, whatever, and preparing to cross the rest of the street. In this plan, you cross the street, and you better be damn well ready to cross the rest of the street, because you only have, I don't know, 5-6 feet in that median. All right, so the plan is to accommodate bicycles. And I've asked before, what are the two reasons why, I suspect that there's only two reasons why bicycles would be downtown in the first place. One, to travel through downtown, or two, to stop and shop, or to go to a restaurant. So they're going to stop. So cars have to do pretty much the same, or are doing pretty much the same thing. They're either going through downtown or they're stopping and shopping. So cars have to park, and wherever they can find a parking space, even not on Main Street sometimes, and then they walk to where their destination is. Why can't bicycles do the same thing? We're talking about a 4-block long strip here. If you put places where bicycles could stop to park their bikes, and then they could walk in two blocks in either direction, I just don't see the purpose of having a bike lane going all the way through 4 blocks. It's supposed to be walker-friendly, right? A pedestrian-friendly city. We've just seen, we had a presentation about that just a little while ago. Well, the interface between bicycles has been said already, and pedestrians either getting out of their car or coming out of the dining areas or the stores and having to cross that bike lane really presents a hazard. And the other gentleman mentioned rightly that there are more intersections that a bicycle will have to contend with than if in the current plan, which is also legally enforced, that bicycles are a mode of transportation that are in the street. They have the same rights and responsibilities as a car. But if you don't feel safe in those lanes, there are other options. You could park your bike and walk, or you could ride around downtown. Specifically, I'd like to mention a couple of problems with the Central Square proposal. I think everybody that's driven down there knows how congested the intersection gets when Court Street comes into the square. And there's a yield sign. Some people do it, some people don't. There's traffic that's trying to get over to West Street, and there's traffic that's going to try to get onto the 2 lanes going south on Main Street. And it's a little bit of a cluster, you know what. And now with this plan, we're going to be narrowing those choices down to 2 very specific lanes where we have to duke it out to get into the right lane. That island that they have proposed there takes away a lot of the flexibility of that intersection. And I believe it'll cause backup all the way around the square back to Main Street for traffic that's going around the square to try to get onto West Street or to go south on Main Street. So I proposed eliminating that island and reconfiguring the square to its original configuration. Also, in the current plan, there is a turnaround at the end of Main Street before the intersection with West Street and Roxbury Street, where you have a choice to be able to get in the lane and turn and go south. I don't know how many times I've done that so that I could get to Gilboa Avenue, so I could go up Gilboa Avenue instead of West Street. I don't see that turnaround in this plan. So anyway, I would like to just say that, we were never given an option for no change, and that would be the least expensive option. Yes, we could dick around with a couple of changes here and there, the Gilboa Ave flat table idea, perhaps making some accessibility issues go away. But overall, I think what we have here today is a beautiful city, and people desire to come here, and they enjoy being here, and it's because we have a garden. We have a grove of trees downtown, all of whom are going to be removed, and we have garden beds, and people love walking along the sidewalks and seeing those flowers bloom, and it's not just one season, it's from spring and through fall, and we're going to lose all that. It's going to become essentially a shopping mall with a long strip, a long median with some trees in it, a lot of parking along the sides with very few trees in between them, and it's going to be boring and plain, and you're losing a lot. You're losing what you already have, and it's going to cost a lot more money. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you for your thoughts. In the front row.
I have to bring the computer over, so I'd like to go last, if that's okay.
Thank you. You want to be
I
last?
just have to drag my computer over.
I can't hear what you said, but that's okay.
I said I would like to go last because I have to bring my computer over.
Good. Okay, back row with the hat.
Gonna try sitting today.
Okay, before you get started.
Yeah.
If you want to stand up and stretch and move around a little, it would not be overly rude, but we will keep moving forward. But standing and stretching is a good thing. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Name and address.
Yes, Dave Morrill, Mechanic Street here in Keene. I had a prepared statement. I'm going to read some of it, but a couple things came up I wanted to respond to.
Sure.
One question was asked, what is the destination of bikers on Main Street? I think the destination of bikers on Main Street is the same destination as the cars on Main Street and the pedestrians Main Street. So it seems like, I don't know, want to put that out there. Second, I was thinking about it, and we're talking about adding protected bike lanes, but it seems to me that we already have unofficial multimodal lanes out there on the sidewalks, because people are riding their bikes and their scooters and their whatever on the sidewalks. And so having a separated place on the sidewalk for those vehicles seems like a safer option to me, probably supported by the data that another speaker gave. The option here is not my first choice, like many of us. It's not my first choice. I really like the roundabout option. It's not my second choice. I really like the single lane option, but it is a choice. It is an option that I think can be satisfactory. And I like the expanded green space on the square. I like the narrowed car lanes around the square. I like the fewer crosswalks. But what I like most about it is, and what would make it satisfactory to me, is the addition of the bike lanes. They offer economic benefits that others have spoke to, safety benefits as well that others have spoke to. And the drawbacks are essentially zero. If it turns out to be a huge mistake, we can take the bike lanes away, change signage, change paint, whatever, expand the dining space, expand the walking space. It seems like if you look up the word low risk, high reward in the dictionary, there is a picture of our hypothetical bike lanes out there. And so please, we've been asking for these bike lanes for years. Please give us the bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, oh, no, you're going to be last. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I just can't see him.
Hi, Tony Contarino, 11 Woodside Avenue. When I came to the last meeting and I saw all these diagrams with the stretches of green representing the bike lanes, I can't fathom how practical that is. The shortest distance is between 2 points. And when you see all the parking spaces there, one's got to assume that they're going to get out of their car and they're going to go across the bike lane. And so it's not like there's 1 or 2 or 5 different crosswalks, but there's actually an intersection in essence between each parking lot and their destination, which is across to the sidewalk. So I bicycle. If I go down Main Street, I go down the street. I feel perfectly comfortable doing that. But I'm just, if we take away trees, we take away, some of the beautiful parts of the street, just to give the bike lane a trial, I would be willing to bet that this bike lane won't last very long. And I do think, I know what it's like being hit. I just think it's, I'm not sure what a protected bike lane would look like. I don't know if, how do you delineate the bike lane from the walking lane? But the big thing is, as long as there's parking spaces there, people get out of their car and they're going to go towards the shop. They're not going to go backwards across the road. And I just think with bikes coming, whizzing by occasionally, and then even as a cyclist, when you're riding on that, I try to avoid walking traffic at all points. I mean, I want to get on a road or a trail and just shoot for it. So I like the idea that someone had mentioned maybe a place off the street where you can park your bike, and if you want to walk up and down the street, that makes a lot of sense to me. But to have essentially a cycling lane there and all the sacrifices that are going to go space-wise, to me doesn't make sense. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like clarification, if you don't mind. The gentleman over here says he wants to be last because he needs his computer. He can bring the computer over. Is he intending to attach or connect the computer to our system? Because that wouldn't be permitted.
I'm just going to plug the display in so that I can show you a picture.
No, well, that would not be permitted.
Oh. So what the attorney is saying is that you cannot connect your computer into the
Digital
city.
system.
But Stantec can.
Stantec is using our computer system.
All right.
It's a security issue, Mr. Chairman.
Understood. I get it. And you could still speak. We come back to the second time later. Who's first? Yeah, over there, please. You, yes. Hi.
Hi, Laura Tobin, Center Street. So I just wanted to kind of come, it's nice that this is right in front of me. I just wanted to come and I had heard the other night at the meeting that parking was the most important concern for everyone. And so I just wanted to kind of it's not for me. Walking is, I'm a pedestrian. If there were a bike lane, I might buy a bike. But right now, it's not really feasible for me to, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. But one thing I wanted to just kind of discuss briefly was, I know I've heard a lot of people mention the trees. So anyone who walks on Main Street, if you've looked at the trees, you know that they're really unhealthy. I don't know why that is, but the bark is falling off of them. So it's likely that if they are not on the way out now, many of them will be very soon. I wrote a letter about this the other day. But in terms of multimodal and kind of focusing on different aspects, while I would concede that we would need to accommodate a lot of different modes of transportation, ultimately, one always needs to be prioritized. I'm not going to say which one that is, but it's just kind of a matter of when not everything can be the most important. And so when I look at this, it looks like in some sections, vehicles are the most important, and in some sections, biking, what is the pink here? Pedestrian or multifunctional use is the most important. So the reason I bring this up is just because when I look at where the sort of the connection points, the streets where we would have to cross, I don't know how people are intending to get all the way around the circle and what the incentive at this point would be for that. The space in the middle, the square, but the green section in the middle, that's actually pretty unaccessible at the moment, because anytime you cross, you have to, you're crossing or watching traffic coming from 5 different directions. So if vehicles are the most important things, then I'd say maybe just get rid of the sidewalks, because if it's not, I want it to be walkable, but right now it's not, and it's not. I love dining outside, but the tables take up the majority of the space, which means that you can't see the storefronts, and it makes it it blocks the view. The umbrella's up. While it's nice when you're dining, it blocks the view. Vehicles, I know that there is a lot of traffic. I've noticed that a lot of traffic, they drive around in circles looking for parking spaces, which is not really a great use of the roadway. And part of this kind of also comes back to the mentality, and if this is intended to be a walkable place, then the attitude has to be geared towards that mindset. The other day I crossed the street 3 times. Literally no one stopped for me. And one woman, I only crossed in the crosswalk. No one stopped for me before I stepped into the middle of the road. It wasn't busy. It wasn't, visibility was great. And I actually had one woman, I stepped out into the crosswalk and I got past the yellow line. She honked really loudly and yelled out the window to me to get out of the effing way. And that's just kind of a mentality that it is when this area, when downtown is geared toward drivers, they do kind of take the right of way. And so if it is intended to be purely just a roadway, then great. It's right now, like I said, it's not really easy to walk. And so I guess I would just find another route. The other thing I just kind of wanted to comment on is, I've heard people express a lot of different views about, well, what about the gardens? What about where we're going to put the snow? Right now the snow is piled in creating a blind spot so that if you are crossing, you can't see oncoming traffic and traffic can't see you until you are almost across the street. It's piled in bus stops where elderly people have to climb over snowbanks to get to the bus or whatever vehicle is picking them up. That means that the bulldozers, when they clear it, they destroy the sidewalk, which needs to be replaced. The gardens, they are very nice, except that dogs pee in them, so everything kind of, you can see those spots where they are dying. And so I guess I'm just kind of asking to kind of take a look at it in like a fully comprehensive view. I would hope that kind of one of the goals would be that people would come to Main Street and potentially start off at a restaurant. And then from there, they would want to walk around. And I think that was kind of, I always thought that was the intent, and I always thought in general of Main Street. The sidewalks used to be taken care of, they used to be cleared. They're not really now, and now they're just full of tables in the summer, so it's pretty much not usable most of the year. And I understand that that's the way things are now, and this is a change, but I guess I just kind of, I think it's a mindset of what you want the priorities to be. So, thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Okay, lady in the front, and then eventually Roger.
My name is Sandra Whippy, and I live at 233 Paco Avenue here in Keene. I came to Keene in 1953 to go to college, married a boy from Keene. I can remember when that main street had no center planting on it. And I hate to think of us losing those gorgeous trees and gardens. I think we have one of the most beautiful main streets in New England. My other comment is that for years, I have worked with Monadnock Interfaith Project about bathrooms downtown, not just the ones in this building, but public bathrooms down in the area of Railroad Square, where they would be more accessible for our shoppers. I'd like to ask, my understanding is that the proposal at the moment is that they would put the plumbing and electricity in to have a welcome center with public bathrooms around Gilboa Avenue. Is that a correct perspective at this moment, or have they cut that out?
We have not located where the public bathrooms will be. There have been talk about a welcome center several years ago, but right now we don't have a specific plan or location, so that would be something that would be discussed later in the design process.
I understand that there's no prospective plan for the welcome center,
Right.
but in the plumbing,
Yes.
when you put that plumbing in, is there a plan for the plumbing? Or if we decided to do that a couple of years from now, would we have to dig it all up again?
No, there is a plan to include plumbing for public bathrooms. We just have not finalized a location for that yet.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, but I would again like to express my concern about losing the beauty of our main street, which is quite remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you. Get to you, Roger, you be last. Back, yes, you, yellow, I think.
Sam Jackson, Court Street. Oh, how do I was going to talk about safety, but that's kind of already
Could you
been.
pull the mic a little closer?
Yeah, that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to touch on safety, but I think somebody else did a much better job than I did. I want to address a couple of points that I kind of heard tonight, just as they came up. One of them was that bikers might not be able to walk long distances. So I heard somebody point out that if somebody is biking, that they can walk to their destination. Biking is a low-impact sport, so anybody with bad knees can use biking as a mode of transportation where they might struggle to walk instead. And I don't want those individuals to be forgotten while, maybe their knees are just perma-bad, and maybe they're recovering, but either way, wouldn't want them forgotten. Another point, there are a lot of individuals who are very comfortable with biking on Main Street. I'm kind of one of them. I'll do it. I don't really like it. It's very intimidating, and I feel like I need to keep up with motorized traffic, it means I'm going faster when I don't actually want to be. But regardless, when individuals say that they can bike down that road and leave it at that and say that there shouldn't be bike lanes, it's ignoring entire demographics of people that can't do that. New bikers, parents with young ones, children, people that are, especially children, where they have this opportunity to maybe gain a little bit of independence through the multimodal of biking. They're just not allowed that because our Main Street doesn't allow that safe movement. I've also heard, so where do these bike lanes attach to? At one end, there is no bike lane. Up on Court Street, there is no bike lane. Bike lanes need to be implemented incrementally. It doesn't fiscally make a lot of sense to, put in bike lanes in every single place all in 1 year. That would be impossible. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't implement them here, just that this is one step in the right direction. A lot of people are afraid of change, and I get that. Change is scary, but change is also incredibly important. And if we want to see ourselves improve, we can't allow ourselves to stagnate. We need to look to the future. And yes, we do have a large senior population. They will never be properly supported without a solid youth population, and trends do show that the youth of today want multimodal options and pedestrian-based traffic with calming measures. Sorry, pedestrian-based traffic calming measures. There we go. Finally, I urge us to just replace every once in a while, replace our, when we say things that are, when we are upset with perhaps bicycles in the space, bicyclists might hit somebody or that they might prove a danger to people. I urge us to replace bicycles with cars because oftentimes they are, cars deal more damage, automobiles deal more damage, and they are often ignored in these conversations too. And the cyclist is demonized in a way. I heard from somewhere when we want to make a, let me see here. When we want to make a shared space, we want all modes of transportation to be equal, but we can't really work under that. In practice, the mighty trumps. Cars will dominate. And we need to put effort into improving our bicycle and pedestrian pathways so that way the less mighty can survive. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Roger, please. Making an entrance.
Some good slapstick comedy.
Roger Weinreich, business at 110 Main Street and residence at 51 Railroad Street. So Keene is changing, like we all know that, and there's a part of me that doesn't like to see any change. as a business owner, and I'll speak as one of the downtown businesses, not as a restaurant, but as a retail shop. Past 32 years have been interesting. The beginning was a lot easier. For example, we lost Miller Brothers last year, and we exchanged customers constantly, but even before Miller Brothers, there were 2 or 3 other men's clothing stores years before that we benefited from. So every time we lose a downtown retail business, it affects the rest of us who are remaining. The trend around the country, as you probably know, is for retail businesses to leave downtowns a little bit and to have restaurants come in. So 32 years ago, there were 2 or 3 restaurants downtown. Now there are probably 24 or 20 anyway, which is a good thing. It doesn't always impact the businesses because our business hours tend to be not into the evening for lots of reasons. But we appreciate that the businesses are there. But issues of parking are pretty profound for the daytime business owners. So is the traffic. So anything that we can do to increase traffic in the downtown, vehicular, bike, pedestrian, is a super asset. So the trend around the country, just from looking, and you guys can do the same research, we've gone from downtown retail shopkeepers over the past couple hundred years into service businesses like insurance companies, tax prep companies, stockbrokers all come downtown because the rent is relatively cheap for them to have signage in front of their building for a couple $1,000 a month, but they don't draw traffic. Most of their customers come in via the internet, but that's a trend. Restaurants push the model really nicely because they draw traffic, but the model that comes next, which is going to come to Keene, is residents. So people decide to move into the downtown, not just to live there, not just to visit, but to live there, and they do that because it's a livable, walkable space. So with that in mind, a bunch of people got together and brought Jeff Speck to Keene 1 month ago tonight to do a presentation. And what's telling about that is individuals raised about $10,000 of Jeff's $12,000 fee. So there are a lot of people in this town who want to put their money where their mouth is and see what can we do to have the best surgeon. So that's how some of us looked at Jeff and said, okay, this guy is the top guy in the country. Let's hear his opinion. Now, he came in as just a presenter. He wasn't doing a design, but as he said at the meeting, I'll give you guys a little bit of a design. So the 2 specific things that he brought out, which Stan Peck had also brought out.
Sit back a little.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think so,
I can hear myself. I don't know.
Well,
How's that?
Better.
That's in the middle? Okay. That's not good. Sorry. Okay. So he brought forward one idea, which Stantec had put down, which was this 1 lane in each direction. And I remember when I saw Stantec do that, and when I saw Jeff do it, I was like, yeah, forget that. That doesn't work. I realized that my decision about why it didn't work was purely in my head. Like, how could it work? We've got 4 lanes. How could you go from 4 to 2? But what Jeff did that Stantec didn't quite take the time to do is he explained how it works, why it's the superior situation, and why all around the country that's happening now. Even in major cities where they're running 4 lanes, they're condensing them to 2. So with us, it actually makes our downtown traffic slower, as you guys know, because with 1 lane, there's no racing. The second lane is usually a racing passing lane in mid-Main Street. Lots of opportunities for pedestrians to cross a shorter, narrower piece of roadway. So listening to Jeff, I kind of got that. That made sense. And then when he went up to Central Square, and I had this whole thing in my head about the roundabout, and he debunked that one right away. He said roundabouts are great, but in a downtown, they're too dynamic. They move traffic too fast. You want a static approach. He said it's traffic lights, but he did that preliminary design of 2 dogleg 4 intersections in Central Square with 2 sets of traffic lights. Ran it by the top designers in Stantec, who we haven't met yet, and said, yeah, this would be ideal for your town, and it would triple your green space, which would give you more opportunity to do events if you're a really event-driven town. So I'm kind of rambling through all that Jeff Speck stuff pretty quickly because in my mind, he is one of the lead designers. We haven't had a design from him. His design fee is probably double his speaking fee. It's around $25,000. So I would basically ask the city to consider bringing in the top designer, seeing his design. If the city can't spend it, I bet the public can raise the money, and we'll try to do that. But I don't think we're done looking at the options. As much as I'd like to put this to rest, I think the stakes are too big. And when Jeff Speck stood up there and he said, you don't have to take down any trees, and he said, and you can keep the parking the same or increase it, my eyes all perked up, my head perked up. So I'd still like to hear what else could we do before we stamp down and say we're doing this. So, you know, great if we can add more parking and keep the trees, bring more people to town. And thank you guys for doing your job and listening to everybody, because I'm glad I'm on this side, because you've got tough decisions. But like everyone has said here, the decisions are not about me as a baby boomer aging. I'm going to be here 10, 20 years. That's great. This is a design project for the next 100 to 150 years. So good luck and thanks.
Thank you. Okay, back row. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Diana Duffy. I'm a resident of Page Street here in Keene. I want to first just thank you again, and keep in mind the long view that Mr. Roberts, you mentioned at your remarks, sort of that this is the long view, and I just want to acknowledge that there's just been so much work that got us all here today. When I think about all the analyses that have been brought up, all the studies, all the dedicated staff and council work that got us here, this meeting, I feel like, is just part of a long series of heavy lifts that planning launched years ago, as Jan Manwaring mentioned. And it helps me think, yeah, this is part of a long effort, and our long view is one reason that got us here. And I think it helps frame the whole effort. And I want to thank you for sticking with this, and all of you all for being here too. I chose to move to Keene about 12 years ago. I was a willing exile from the Boston neighborhood of 20 years. One of the key reasons that we chose to live here, what you've heard so much before, walkability, bikeability, get around ability without a car. I'm one of those car-free people that is happy to be able to live here and do it and still be part of that solution. You've heard about these things over and over, and I just think about when we looked at Keene and other places we could live, it was that range of options of getting around, biking, walking, riding, driving. It allows us to live, work, play in New Hampshire in a way that we feel like we're part of the solution. Where are the bikes going? Members, this 59-year-old person has been biking to every job I've had in Keene for 10 years, all my doctor's appointments, all the supermarkets. I do it all by bike. And I can because of what's here. And if it can be better, then more people can be part of the solution. I'm a big fan of making those improvements so we can get around safely. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay.
We have the infographic in it.
You get
I think you'll find the infographic on the second page to be the one we can zoom in on first. Drew Bryanton, 30 Nelson Street, Chair, BPAC. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you again tonight. I did want to take some time to address a point that I heard at the workshop. I think Councilor Roberts, you actually brought it up as to the why do we need the bike infrastructure? When you look down Main Street, you hardly ever see a bike. And so I wanted to take, and multiple people have brought this up tonight, but I wanted to shed some data on this because there's a lot of different types of cyclists. We've heard from several cyclists tonight, but there's a broader spectrum of them. And so this data started specifically in 2006 from the city of Portland. Portland, Oregon wasn't always a bike mecca. They started out as a lot of other cities do, but with specific planning and intentionality, they changed their city and brought in a lot of bike infrastructure. And so this initial paper proposed that there were 4 different types of cyclists. And we can go through them, and you see in the graphic, the strong and the fearless, the enthused and confident, the interested but concerned, and the no way, no how. All right, and he proposed that these cyclists probably broke down into different percentages. 1% for the strong and fearless, 7% for the enthused and confident, 60% for the interested but concerned, and then around 33% for the no way, no how. Several years later, Portland State University followed up on this initial research by calling doing phone surveys across 50 major metropolitan areas and found very conclusive results. So the percentages may change a little bit, but we're still looking at about the same percentages. And so why these bike lanes are important is because we're specifically interested in this 60%. This is the general population that we're talking about that would identify as interested but concerned. Yeah, I ride my bike, but I would never go downtown. Or I thought about getting groceries on my bike last week, but it felt a little bit too hard. And specifically, why is it too hard is because they're feeling too much, we call this level of traffic stress, right? Which is one of the main reasons you don't see a lot of cyclists downtown, because the level of traffic stress is too high. We do see some, yes, and those are the strong and fearless. All right, but there's a huge contingent of the population that we're not seeing now. And so when we provide this infrastructure, we will begin to see these people come through. So I wanted to put some data to support that, because there are a lot of different people that cycle, and they have different comfortabilities. But I think it's important to recognize that the biggest percentage of the population we have yet to really harvest and tap into in Keene. Councilor Greenwald, you mentioned at the workshop that you recently purchased an e-bike. Congratulations, that's super exciting. And so I would invite you to come to any BPAC meeting, second Tuesday of the month, and as you move around the city of Keene from a bicyclist perspective and have new observations, I would encourage you to share those with us so we can sort of get your input on them. I'll just remind the committee that the BPAC of our committee charge, all right, so why are we here? To report and make recommendations to City Council and City staff with respect to the development and management of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, to serve as an advocate for the interests of the city's bicycle pedestrian path infrastructure. We have professors of GIS, we have professional planners, we have present and former City Council members on the BCAC committee. We have decades of bicycle advocacy experience, and we want you to be able to leverage that to make informed decisions. I will say, as we move into these next design phases, we hope that we can maintain an open communication with you and be able to inform and educate you on some of these new choices as we can continue to advocate for bike and pedestrian improvements as some of the fine tuning goes through. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Just about heard from everybody in the room. Hey, come on back.
Good evening, Todd Horner, Pearl Street. I'm also Vice Chair of the Bike Ped Advisory Committee. I've got a couple of thoughts. I'll keep it as short as possible. Regarding, biking in the street versus protected bike lanes and these different types of cyclists that Drew just mentioned, I guess on good days, I'd consider myself the strong and the fearless bicyclist, willing to bike in traffic when I'm on my own. But my family and I recently downsized from 2 cars to 1 car for cost reasons, for environmental reasons, and we use our bike to transport our toddler around the city. And it's fantastic being able to navigate good chunks of our city on our rail trail system, separated from traffic. It's safe. But there's no way I'm biking up and down Main Street with a toddler on the back of the bike, right? It's just not safe. The speed of the traffic, the cars backing out. Protected cycling lanes would make it possible for me and my family to navigate downtown on bike. The second point that I wanted to raise was the connection between this project and its potential to increase multimodal options in the city and our city's housing shortage. We have a housing shortage in the city. Folks are struggling to find a place to live. A lot of the employers are having a hard time finding workers, including the hospital, including downtown businesses. We need more housing, and there's opportunity for more housing development in and around downtown. If that development happens, if we do see that infill, giving folks the opportunity to move in and around downtown on foot, on bike, that's going to keep our parking demand in check. It's going to keep fewer cars off on the road. It's a win-win. So I just want to raise that as an issue as we look towards the future, how this project could impact housing and have a connection with that important issue. Just wanted to bring that to your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Dory?
Good evening, Dory Maston. I live in Swansea, but I have real estate here in the city. You've heard, I had notes, you've heard everything I would say through everybody else. As you know by my attending all these meetings, I'm against a large majority of the cosmetic changes to downtown. However, tonight I'm going to assume that we are here for this project that's in front of us. So I just want to give my view of the roundabout first as it sits currently on this map. The proposed changes takes out the slip lane. If I was coming from Court Street and I needed to go to City Hall, how would I get there? Would I drive all the way down, turn at Railroad Street, come up Church, and sit at a light again? I don't know how we'd get there. We're putting a lot of traffic downtown, unless I'm wrong. Am I?
I don't know.
How would I get
No,
to
I would like
City
to
Hall?
just clarify that question, because I hadn't really seen it.
Gladys had passed it yesterday.
To Court or Stantec guy, can you go around? Or is
To answer
that?
the question, certainly conceptually, yes. You have chosen a lighted intersection, similar to what we out there today. What we haven't sat down and done yet is design that lighted intersection. That lighted intersection may include a slip lane, but we haven't got there yet. So I'm waiting for, again, for the decision on the type of intersection that the council would like to have there. And right now, it appears it is a lighted intersection.
So
But-
at this intersection,
No, okay, just to follow a bit, because that confused me too. So without the slip lane or the banana island, so-called, you could not go from Court Street around to Washington Street?
You could, again, because we're gonna have a lighted intersection. You're gonna have signals out there, which I don't know where I'm gonna place them yet, because we haven't gotten into that detail, that would direct traffic to move in different directions. Ultimately, we could end up with another slip lane if that makes the lighted intersection work at the most optimum level. So
Okay.
again, this is back to, the decision is a lighted intersection. How you end up configuring it is dependent on the next level of design. So how you
Okay.
get from point A to point B, yes, the way that's laid out today, you got plenty of space to do that. There's 56 feet of pavement, so that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay, good. I think that's a good one for the background notes. Yes, please continue.
I guess I would encourage you folks to think about that slip lane, and if this is the plan you choose, to please put in the slip lane, because that seems like an awful lot of traffic at lights, a lot of different cars going in different directions, and we could keep traffic flowing. And if the environment is all what this is all about, or a huge part of it, why are we making those cars stand still with their cars running when they could simply just flow with traffic? My second and largest concern about this plan isn't necessarily the bike lanes all down Main Street. It is the bike lanes on Central Square. Those are 3 streets that I ask you to please not put the bike lanes there, and the following is my reasons. 1, we're reducing the lanes on Central Square. That will cause a congestion that we don't want. We don't need cars waiting and idling and trying to intermingle in 2 lanes. Now, my husband is a UPS driver. He parks in front of City Hall every day, Monday through Friday. That's his stop because he has packages for this building. So does the Brinks truck, so does FedEx, and so do your other deliveries, your paper goods, your staples, all of that. The way this plan sits now, that can't happen, because cars that are going in the right lane are intended to go through Washington Street. Those cars would have to wait for him as they, or they, all of them, as they couldn't go around. Also, our 18-wheeler trucks, and I know they only allowed downtown for local delivery, but that's what we are, local retail business and restaurants. We need our deliveries. So our tractor trailers, our US food trucks, are about the length of 4 cars. For one, they would hit those 2 medians almost every single time. And I know this because if you folks also go on the transportation website and see the distances, 9 times out of 10, they're going to hit those medians. They're going to go over. So now you only have 2 lanes. If I was going up Washington Street and I was going to turn to go towards the stage, now the stage and myself, Lucas, all the other businesses as well, actually, we still get food deliveries, we get equipment. We just barely had a new giant stove and beer refrigerator delivered. That comes by a Dewey pile. That is a huge 18-wheeler. If that truck were to park in those 2 lanes, traffic would be backed up forever because the truck has to stop. It has to stop. I mean, we can't, there's no way around it, same as UPS and FedEx. There's no longer the 3rd lane to just go around them. Now, the path that comes up from Court to in front of the poorhouse. Today, as I was walking back from lunch, right at the end, and I'm sure it happened to many of you, but instead of 1 car being at that median, there were 2. They split. One was side by side right after the crosswalk, one intending to go down Main Street, one intending to head towards West Street. I'm not saying that that should be that way. I'm just acknowledging that, yes, there is a problem there that probably a stop sign could cure, but it most certainly is an issue. And it's nice to see that if you do make it, at least go further down to Court, only 1 car will be able to be there instead of 2 getting side by side. The way the bike lanes are now, if you were to look at the map, I think it's 7 feet wide. By making the bike lane 7 feet wide, you push the parking out into the street. Now, to make everyone else aware, where the bike lane would begin would be at the end of where the white lines are for parking right now. That pushes those cars right out into the center of the square and makes those traffic lanes much more narrow. That's huge. If our whole point, which I thought in the beginning we had a traffic problem and we needed a roundabout to get traffic flowing. Now, apparently, we don't have a traffic problem because we can reduce Central Square to 1 lane. It doesn't make any sense. We need to keep the traffic flowing through the city. We need to keep people downtown. It's vibrant. It's beautiful. I love the idea, as you know, for saving the square. It was my main focus when this started. It's nice to see that we're doing that and that we've made great efforts in that. However, business has to go on. We all need to still work and live downtown, and most of us are driving cars to do that, and we need to get traffic through. So for me, the stage, and other businesses, I ask that you consider us in your thinking tonight, and whatever plan you do come up with, I ask that at least those 3 streets do not have bike lanes, and we keep the width of Central Square so we can continue to get our deliveries and do business as we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. So you guys want copies of this? I've given them copies already. Oh, absolutely. Pictures of that for the legal place. You all have it. I'm sorry that I can't put these pictures website called keensquare.org that you can go to see the pictures from this. All right, can you hear me all right? Everybody hear all right? Yeah. All right, I'm just going to read it.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave Cam, 21 Red Oak. The
Thank
following
you.
observations and recommendations are made based on the multi-line hybrid option provided by Stantec and modified by myself and my business. The statements below are intended to provide further design analysis and recommended designs for base reference and the initial Stantec proposal. The additional information can be seen on keensquare.org. So I'll just read these quickly. I'll even try and do the 3 or 4 minute thing. Keene Square should remain in the same shape as it is today. The triangles that they propose in this document should be the same size, allowing bike lanes on the inside. I'm not taking any position on bike lanes. I'm taking this picture and enhancing the way they're positioned. The proposed enlargement provides for very little useful space the way it is today because it enlarges the whole area of the island in the middle, and you can see a lot of people have talked about the problems. When there is more space required for planned events and blocked off, we can do as we do today for necessary space for attendees and vendors. You can expand it and block off the streets, etc. The traffic lights are programmable. The Stantec view at this point is to leave them the way they are. They can provide a better traffic flow. Signaled right turns can be programmed in 3 locations where there is crosswalk traffic. See the diagrams. What that really means is it's not a right turn only. It's a right turn that's controlled by the walk lights. If there's nobody there to walk, then you can take the right turn. So it's a programmed right turn, right? And that you can see that in many places if you look at that map in the back. Northbound Main currently is one of the longest light delays. We did a week-long study, just like Stantec did, on the queues of vehicles, et cetera. And so the fact that you could use some, and high traffic volumes, the fact that you could release that early and release right turns would be beneficial. If there are no walk lights that are turned on in that cycle that we have, because we start with everybody stops, and then we get released lanes all the way around at different times. And we actually stop, and the current proposal is to stop all traffic like it is today. Since we got smart walk lights, we can basically say if there's no walk lights, no walk lights have been registered, then we don't have to stop that traffic. So instead of waiting for the 45 seconds to a minute and a half to allow people to go, we can use that time to go. So traffic lights that are programmable, which are in the plan, are very, very important. The Main Street turnaround, we've talked about that. It's not in this diagram. We did a study for a week, and everybody that came up, almost 99% of the people that came up to take that turnaround and go back south on Main Street proceeded beyond Gilbo. There was 1 or 2 that turned right on Gilbo after making that turn. So basically what you could do is you can move that turnaround down to Gilbo, get rid of that turnaround at the square, and use that space to expand and provide an island in the middle that would be nicer for the people that were crossing. You could probably also get rid of that left lane and go down to 2 lanes, which would then make the crosswalk a little bit better. Bicycle lanes. They should be located on the street adjacent to the and integrated with the right-hand traffic lane. Integration with the sidewalk is very dangerous to pedestrians and therefore basically unusable by most bike riders. When you're riding a bike and you're going 2 to 3 miles an hour, that's fine, but generally if there's a peloton or several bikers, they're not going 2 to 3 miles an hour, nor do they want to. They want to go a little faster and cruise, and that's no place for them to cruise. I put some statistics in there. Well, let me get going here, get us out of here. The all the new two-wheeled vehicles that are electronic, et cetera, probably should be ridden on the street side. That bike lane should be moved to the street side, and you would see that in this picture. An unloading example. A driver puts his stroller on the curb impeding bike traffic. He returns to fetch his child or packing goods or other passengers entering or exiting vehicles. And that impedes the bikes that are already there if you put that bike lane between the cars and pedestrians. Current bike lanes are poorly marked. We probably should go out and use and actually mark them as they are today. If we're going to do bike lanes, there's a very, there's a very bright green sign that's actually been marked on either side of the square that's used. If you go to Tampa, Florida and look at their views, it's very bright green. This provides, we're not going to mark that green for the bikers. We're going to mark that so that drivers understand where the bikers will be. So that's why it's bright green. Today you see those little stencils around, and they actually go all the way around the square, and you don't know that they're there and you can't see them. And the last thing I'll go into real quick is vehicle angled parking. There's a diagram in here, and Stantec has proposed that you put these lines at 60 degrees. If you put these lines at 60 degrees and they're the same length, they're now going to protrude more than 2 feet on each side, so we're wasting 4 feet of actual parking space. If you turn them to 50 degrees, you actually can park in the same margin, and you have 20 feet of parking instead of 16. So you can actually park longer vehicles. When you do slant them, it does take up about 6 more feet for a whole series of them, but that's a small price to pay. Crosswalk should be widened. The center of Main Street crosswalk would be expanded to allow plenty of room for pedestrians that need it a bit slower. One of the things is that third lane may be removed. The other thing is the statue can be moved down a bit because we got rid of the turnaround by putting that turnaround and the left turn down at Gilbo Street. Now, you can block that left turn down at Gilbo for festivals and go down to Emerald, so there is a roundabout. But there's a considerable amount of traffic that comes up and turns around to get back down there, and there's some that comes up and goes out West Street. We'd alleviate that by letting go out Gilbo. It's a very easy run, and that can be blocked off. So there's some other details, and if you look on the website, there's other discussions of points of view. And what I'm after here is really proposing that we're modifying the solution a bit as we work on it. And these are the items that I think would be effective in modifying that solution. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And anybody that wants to see those diagrams afterward, I can put them up on the computer over there.
Jim, did you want a second comment?
Just a quick comment. I'm anybody. There's been a lot of talk about all the trees that are all the trees that are going to be leaving. This is actually, I think you guys probably know, is more like for the people behind me. No matter what incarnation we do, there are going to be trees removed because of the construction. And many of the trees have to be removed anyway because of the blight or because of the disease. What people are missing is that after they're removed, many are going to be replaced. Plantings are going to be replaced. That design hasn't been brought up. So it's just, I've seen several people think, oh my God, and I think sometimes they attribute it to the bike lanes, that all these trees are going to be removed. That's just part of the construction process and part of the culling of the diseased trees. They're going to be putting trees back. They're going to be putting other planters back. That's going to be coming later, but it's just somehow people think these trees are going to be removed and it's going to remain that way. And I think you all know that, but it seems to be a misconception that's going around. But thanks anyway. Thanks.
Anyone else like to join the conversation? Because truly, when this moves on to city council, the public will not be able to speak. And again, according to the city attorney, we will make this motion and the council meeting will be open for amendments, which was my plan. Okay, committee, yes.
Thank you for everybody's comments and patience. There's some really good comments made tonight. Just a couple of comments and a couple of observations from where I sit. I do want to point out, for the past year, this roundabout proposal is what's been in front of us for over a year, as you all know. We've been through it all. A couple of weeks ago, when I realized there wasn't enough council support on it, we were given this, and this is all my markings on it for changes that I think we need. The problem I have here now is it's not that I think it's a bad proposal. I think it needs some changes. The problem I have is we had this one for a year. We get this one, and we're told, you got 2 weeks, hurry up, get it done. And I am in no hurry to get it done and make mistakes. We were also told a little bit that, well, it's not the final project, don't worry about it, just submit it as is. I will not vote to submit this as is until there's been a discussion on some of these issues. Been around the block enough to know that, if you don't change it now, sometimes it doesn't get changed. I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying I'd rather change it now or next week before this goes out. There was a couple of comments made, and I made some notes here, so just bear with me. One person in the city that nobody has approached, and I asked last week about it, and I checked with him this week, is the fire chief. Nobody from the city, nobody from Stantec has even talked to him. By the way, the fire station's on Vernon Street, if they're not aware of it. So I went over there and talked to the chief today, and he's here. And Chief, if I say anything that, I'm out of order on, let me know, because I made notes and made clear that I would only repeat what he said. One of the comments that I noticed and that he pointed out also, and it's actually with the speaker that mentioned that the UPS truck sometimes parks out here, was if you look at Washington Street where the fire truck comes in, if you look at the proposed curbing out there, if you look at the layout, if you look at how the common is being proposed to move back in, this doesn't work. There is simply no area for the ladder truck to get through based on the lanes here. I don't want to send this out and say, we're going to work on this. I want this fixed by next week before I'll give this a yes vote. Also, former Mayor Lane pointed out, and this is another area the chief pointed out, was the matching island coming out of Court Street. The fire trucks coming down and trying to report to that building over there if there's an issue, that major island is in their way. So both islands at Court and Washington need to be totally redone. Either not an island and just flat, or completely redone, because that doesn't work and that's important. Looking at the common, basically, and it looks like we tried to expand going out to Court Street. If you look at it up there, if you look at it here, to me, that doesn't work. You come out of Court Street, it squeezes you into one lane, and then it jumps back into 2 lanes. I think we're trying to alleviate traffic problems here, not create them. There was a comment made on the slip lane also. We have to have that back, because if you look at it, we also need to put the slip lane back where the flagpole was. The way this is proposed, we're losing the slip lane going around the common, we're losing the slip lane to reverse direction. That means everybody is going to have to go up around the common in one lane now, come around and wait in traffic again because there's no slip lane. Those are major flaws, and I want these taken care of before we send this out. From West Street down, not a major problem. There was a lot of comments made on bike lanes, and a lot of comments made on walkability, okay? So if it's the general consensus that there's gonna be a bike lane, we've gotta figure this out. And I don't wanna hear that just put everything in and we'll adjust it and figure it out later. That never works, we know it. The way it's proposed right now is that there's 15 feet, of kind of common area. Right now, it's 8 feet of sidewalk, 7 feet of bike lane. That bike lane takes up 47% of the common area. I don't believe we're going to have 47% of bikes downtown compared to pedestrian. That number is way out of whack. You heard Jay Kahn mention that to have the most accessible, walkable downtown, we hear that all the time, is you need 12 feet of sidewalk, okay? if that's the case, the 12 feet would mean 80% of walkability, which would leave a 3-foot bike lane, which would be 20%. Okay? An 11-foot sidewalk with a 4-foot bike lane would be a 73% sidewalk, 27% bike lane. These percentages mean something. I don't want to just throw darts at a wall and say, we're going to do 50-50, bike lanes versus pedestrian. Also we have to talk about, are the bike lanes, if we do a designated bike lane, are we going to be able to move those across? Let's talk realistically. Let's say the Colonial Theater has a show at night and 900 people come out, okay? How many people are downtown walking compared to how many people are biking? These are real numbers. These are things that we have to work on. So if we're going to do a shared bike lane, it can't be 47% of the sidewalk. We've got to have real numbers here, okay? So these type of issues, especially on the common, like I said, the bike lanes, that's just a number of footage. And I don't want to say, oh, we'll go back and fix it later. Now, say we do a smaller bike lane, 3 or 4 feet. And I'm not saying no bike lane. I'm just saying something that's reasonable. And all of a sudden, the next 10 years, downtown's all bikes. Well, then we adjust it. But right now, it's not. Right now, downtown is highly percentage pedestrian. And then we have to talk about from December to March. From December to March, do we still leave the bike lanes at that percentage, or are they able to be flexible? Those type of issues need to be talked, because it's just not generic. There's numbers, there's facts, there's people, there's percentages. This percentage doesn't work. As I said, 47% of a bike lane doesn't work when you want to have a walkable city. So you want to have a walkable city, then make the damn thing walkable. But you have to have the numbers to make it walkable. As far as around the common, that needs a lot of work. Like I said, in my opinion, with the exception of putting the slip lane back in, everything Roxbury Street South, with the exception of the percentages of bike lane versus sidewalk, I'm good with. The common needs a ton of work, and I want to get that fixed before we send this out for final design.
Thank you. Counselor.
Thank you. I'm just going to try to bring emotions back down to normal level. I want to clarify something, my comment from last week regarding removing bike lanes if they're not used. It seems people have really taken that out of context a little bit and perceived it to mean that I was somehow dismissive of bike lanes. It's actually quite the opposite. My intention was to calm the fears of those who were opposed to bike lanes. I've heard a lot about seasonal activity. A lot can be said, the same arguments can be said regarding sidewalk cafes. The sidewalk cafes will only be used in warmer weather. We don't have sidewalk cafes in the middle of winter. I think this plan, and again, I'm reiterating what I said last week, does a good job at giving everybody, pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, all fair access to downtown. It's not as aggressive as a single lane option. It's not perfect, but it is a darn good compromise. I also agree with, I took notes of every speaker who spoke tonight. I agree our crosswalks are too wide currently. This plan shortens them. Just earlier, I've spent a lot of time back and forth to appointments on Main Street today specifically, and just my observations from today alone. I saw 2 young boys, about ages 11 and 8, crossing from Miranda's to Miranda's at Roxbury, over to Rhymes, Oil, and then over to Central Square. They had to run to make all of the whole crosswalk within the light pattern. They're young, vibrant children. So I understand that. I'm recognizing the concerns there. In the same token, on West Street, while I was at a red light, I watched a woman at Everglow sit and wait for a crosswalk when there was absolutely no traffic coming. She could have crossed, that it wouldn't have been jaywalking. She had a red light. We had a red light, no traffic. I've heard a lot tonight about trees. I personally intend, as an MSFI committee member and a counselor, I intend to support as many trees, native pollinator plants, and greenery to be added back to the final design concept as much as possible, wherever possible. Yes, it will look different than it does now. That's undoubtedly gonna happen. I also notice right now what we've heard a lot of concerns about the safety of all these changes and adding multimodal. People are just downright inconsiderate of one another. I'm gonna say it. Motorcyclists are aggressive. They are out for getting from where they're going as quick as possible. Pedestrians are also guilty of being inconsiderate. Knees to chest. When you're in a crosswalk, put your phone down, get to where you're going. And cyclists. Not every cyclist uses hand signals. We're all guilty of being a little inconsiderate at times. This change is going to take everyone being a little more considerate of their fellow humankind. I mean, we could talk about that forever. Motorists don't use blinkers. Cyclists don't use their hand signals. If we all were a little more considerate of one another, Main Street could function pretty well. I have had a different experience. I recall emergency responders saying that these proposed changes would work, but I am going to request that maybe at the next council that we just, for the sake of argument, I'm not going to put the fire chief on the spot tonight, but but I think it is important for the project to have both the chiefs of the emergency responders services just say their opinion on this matter on record, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. I also, lastly, Councillor Johnson asked the same question about that slip lane last week. And Court, my understanding of it was that we would still use I guess it is the left lane, if you're coming down Court Street, the lane closest to the square. She was told that she could be in that lane and just go around from Court right back to Washington when the light turned green. And so in essence, it's, I guess, a half U-turn. So I don't think we need the slip lane there. And that was my recollection of the meeting last week. I could be wrong, but again, my recollection. And I think with that, I will end my comments.
Thank you. Counselor.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for being here. First, I want to address Randy's point of 47% of the sidewalk. I think you're missing an entire section of the sidewalk that you're not including in your calculation. You're adding the blue and the yellow together, but there's also this huge pink area. When you add all three, you know, the bicycling section becomes like, 20%. And I think that's reasonable. This is an important means of transportation that a lot of people use. In particular, a lot of less wealthy people use. For the sake of equality, I think it's important we have this here. I also wanted to speak to the slip lane. I think slip lanes in general are a bad idea because they encourage cars to go through without stopping. They go around a corner, they can easily hit a pedestrian. I don't like the proposal for a slip lane at the square here. I don't like the current slip lane at the square here. I think one of the problems with that is that it would basically require a whole other lane, which would make the crosswalk go across 3 lanes instead of 2. Then the shorter we can make those crosswalks, the better it's going to be for pedestrians, the more people are actually going to use Central Square instead of just walking around it. I would love to get more people into Central Square, more pedestrians into Central Square, but the trouble right now is it's just isolated by traffic, and it's a great resource, and it's underused. And finally, I'd like to thank the people who came out in support of downtown bathrooms. I think this is something that we can do. Let's get the plumbing in there. I think that's the kind of thing that helps with grant applications. And then, maybe let's go searching for a grant to get the rest of it built. Because that's an important feature, and I'm going to continue pushing for that throughout this process. So, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Chris, sorry.
I like to look at the big picture. We as Keene taxpayers are spending a lot of money to pay for the city manager, the city engineer, the people we're hiring. If we can't trust them to get the job right, then they all need to be fired and be replaced. Plain and simple. They're to get together with a bunch of things and what they look at, they think it's best for the city. We in turn, as a city council, as the elected people, is to ask them questions and to make sure they're doing their job right, or then just not trying to snowball us or keep us happy. For example, the people talked about Manchester. Okay, yes, Manchester's getting $25 million from the $1 trillion in the investment package. Yes, Manchester has to come up with a minimum of $5 million themselves. But if you go online and look at the Manchester, that just wasn't, oh, let's fix this sidewalk, or let's fix this. That took the education, it took the businesses, the housing. That also includes 1,800 units of housing in that area. That includes bringing in new businesses, that's bringing in new technology. They put a whole bunch. They're talking about putting a bridge in there, putting another mini roundabout. They put a whole bunch. That meant that everybody, all the people at the big, sat down and says, what is going to help the city of Manchester grow for the next 50 to 75 years? What is going to attract people and businesses to come to Manchester, to live in Manchester, to spend their money in Manchester? Okay? What have we been talking about? We've been talking about bike lanes. Well, maybe we can't make it across the crosswalk as quick as possible. Those are all secondary issues that can be solved once you come up with a long-range plan of what you're going to do to keep the city of Keene growing. I was on a city council in 2014 after we had the debacle down in Keene State College, and I said 2 things. There was 2 things when I traveled around the country that the people recognized Keene for. The widest and most beautiful Main Street in the country and the Pumpkin Fest. We spent so much time and we made sure we were going to be scared and we would not address the Pumpkin Fest. So we put that down. Since then, our population is going down. The number of people going to college is going down drastically. So right now, we're arguing back and forth. The only thing right now that keeps people off 91 and stay, why don't I stop in Brattleboro instead of coming to Keene? You destroy downtown's attraction, there is no reason for anybody to get off 91 and leave this town of Brattleboro to come to Keene. Because we would be just like a lot of other small towns in New England. You can't be just like a lot of other small towns in New England. You got to have a niche. You got to have something that sets you apart, that says, yes, my time is valuable to go visit. So what I think we need to be doing is, let's all stop being parochial, all these ones, and let's look at the big picture for the long-term development of this community, or we're going to be parochial right to the end, that we're going to invite our own death in by our own front door.
Thank you. Yep.
I just wanted to address a couple of comments. The bike lane, it's actually a 5-foot bike lane with a 2-foot buffer, so that's the buffer between the sidewalk and the bike lane. The 5 feet width comes from federal guidelines related to sizes of a bike lane, so that's where that came from. In addition, the plans that we're reviewing tonight, these plans and these options were reviewed multiple times at the ad hoc committee. So these are not new. I mean, there's been some changes, modifications here or there, but these plans and the configuration of Central Square and Main Street, they're not new. These have been around a while. They just have now become the more favored option that's been discussed by the council. And then in regards to police and fire, happy to have them put something in writing for you, come speak to you. But I would like the fire chief, since he's here this evening, to speak for himself.
I guess we did put you on the spot.
It's okay. I was expecting it. Don Farquhar, Fire Chief. I've been involved in this project since the Technical Review Committee started. And, so I had a say in all this. And I do appreciate our conversation today, and I'm very happy to speak at the next meeting. So as we discussed today, it is narrow in that area. And we talked about coming over the island area. It can be painted or mountable. So it can have some structure there. This mountable is fine, right? And that would be wide enough. We do that very successfully in all our turnarounds or in the city. So we'll often go up because they're mountable. So there's always different traffic that moves in different ways, right? So it's hard to predict. So having some ability to adjust and move over is always very, very helpful. And I think the common theme here is, one, as we get the plan finalized, things will be refined. And I've been through this process before. So, what may look great now, if you add a sidewalk in one position, it changes the next thing and the next thing. So there's a lot of refinement and revision as you move forward. And I would just say, as a very firm blanket statement, there's not a single member of city staff who would ever put something in place that was unsafe for our citizens. I know I've been here for a short time in my year and a half here. The fire department specifically has been through quite a bit of growth, and with that growth becomes some difficulties. And I've been fully supported by the city manager and city staff in general. So just as a broad blanket statement, one, I deeply appreciate the focus on public safety, as we're going to a car right now, and because it is central to everything. But my final comment would just be, again, in every meeting I've been in on this subject and every other, the safety of the citizens is central. And this project, no matter how it shapes and changes through time until it exists, public safety will be at the center of our decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything further from the committee? No, I'd timidly say, anyone else? Okay, Bobby.
Just the one thing, which is a gentleman did show us the difference in parking slot measurements, that a 50-degree might be better than 60-degree, and maybe it is. I'd love to see the numbers on that.
Okay, if we're at that point, a motion would be appropriate.
I'd be happy to make one. I move to recommend the City Council adopt Concept C multi-lane hybrid option as the design option for the downtown infrastructure improvement and reconstruction project.
Is there a second? Yes, there's a motion and a second. Anything further, committee? Seeing none, all in favor? 2-2. Unanimous? It was unanimous, yes.
And I thought you said 2-2.
Yeah, you said 2-2, yeah.
No, it's just, no, just the sound of the freight train moving along ever so slow. And again, this motion will be open for amendments or comments at the next council meeting. I sincerely want to thank all the public that came out, and I'm really, really pleased that they had an opportunity to speak to us. And I thank you, committee, and to the city staff. And with all that, we are adjourned. Thank you.